I'm sure there's tons of interesting things to talk about that we're currently holding back on because we don't want to spoil the podcast. So without further ado, let me say welcome everyone to the Fated Connections Path of Exile community podcast. We're just 3 days into the league. Is it 2 days or 3 days? 1, 2, 3. 3 days. We just passed the launch weekend. Basically, like 72 hours ago, we were all doing our league start. And today, big shout out to ShakCentral because he couldn't make it. ShakCentral is ill. He was supposed to be here to talk with us about the game. But to be fair, Shak is playing Ruthless, so we'll have him on in a later episode when there's more to talk about from a Ruthless point of view, and then maybe also have someone else with Ruthless expertise so we can have a sort of Ruthless focused podcast. Get into a little bit of the finer details. But as promised, with us here today is not only BalorMage as usual, but we have Aphelion as announced, and last minute Tryxt agreed to join us again. So welcome both of you. Hi Aphelion, how have you been?
I've been really good, thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. How much did you play? How much sleep did you get so far?
Well, let's just say I got a puppy recently. And she's begging me to go to bed.
All right.
Instead of the other way around. So I think I got about 4 or 5 hours the first night, 4 or 5 the other night. Usually I'll just blast like the whole weekend, but I had someone begging me to stop. So,
well, it's always nice when people serve as your last remaining link, like your security line that anchors you in reality, right? So you don't get completely lost in Path of Exile. Awesome. Great. Good to have you here. And welcome back, Tryxt. How have you been in the past week or two?
I've been good. Yeah, definitely binged a good chunk of 3.2 so far. Well, 3.20. I don't know why I just keep saying 3.2. But
I keep doing it too.
Oh, good. Not just me.
Well, because 0.20 is just 0.2.
Yeah, exactly. I don't need to go to the third decimal.
Not when it's a 0.
Decimal.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Why bother? But no, been good. We'll obviously get into the league stuff, but fun so far. Binging a lot of it.
Awesome. Yeah. And you, Balor, what was your league start stream? How much did you play?
23.5 hours.
Oh, that seems solid. Not overboard. Some people do 36, but I feel like anything above 30 is super unhealthy.
Yeah, no, I can't handle that. But I've been binging the crap out of it. I'm playing it right now.
I wasn't expecting anything different.
For our I didn't do it the last 10 podcasts. This is how you know when it's a great league or not a great league. If I just prep a bunch of low tier easy content that doesn't require any of my attention before the podcast so I can play in the background, great league. That means I can't stop.
It's good to see you excited again. I'm glad. That's great. Well, I guess before we go into talking about the league mechanic, it would be wise if we all just give people a little bit of context and tell about our starter plans and how they came together and how it's been going. And then when we all, are on the same page, we know what build everyone is playing, then we can put that into the context of our experiences in the Sanctum and in the league start with the Atlas and all that. So, Aphelion, what have you been going for?
Well, this will be an extremely interesting and in-depth answer that I'm sure everyone will want to hear all about.
On stream right now.
How do you tell someone you're playing Seismic without saying you're playing Seismic? I'm playing
people that you don't value fun over efficiency.
What if I find efficiency fun? And actually, that's kind of why I'm doing it. I don't want to repeat my league start that I had last league, where I bricked my first Shaper, it's been really good. So, Seismic is just an extremely strong start, really good for SSF, tanky. It's got damage. It's been a really satisfying start. And honestly, when I was doing the math at the start of the league to figure out what to play, I just kind of settled on, do I want to play Seismic for 2 weeks or another starter for 3 before I re-roll? That's typically my cadence of how I do things. And I kind of settled on, let's just get something out of the box going and then re-roll in 2 weeks when I find something that points me in a direction. And so far, I'm happy that I've done it. Taking a league break from Seismic has been good anyway. And I'm not as bored with it as I thought I would be. So I'm really having fun.
I mean, Seismic is a great skill, and when we have a league like this with so many unknowns that we can speculate about and that we can explore in the league, it's not the worst idea to eliminate the unknowns about the build and go with something that you're familiar with and that you know is solid, right? Especially like with the Forbidden Sanctum. I'm sure we're going to talk about it a little bit in detail, but I personally was like, oh, maybe I should have started Seismic when I did my first runs, because obviously you could just keep on moving. We see it on the screen right now. You could just walk around everything and just wait for things to die while they really don't have any chance of hitting you and taking down your resolve. Actually kind of good.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and let's see what Tryxt has been doing. Ooh, I see a very similar setup here.
Recently, yes. So basically, when we talked about it last, I was saying that I would probably start Seismic, quite possibly, just because I need to know that I'm going to have a good league start. And again, I have never league started Seismic. As prominent as it's been for so many leagues, I've never actually league started. I've played it a couple of times, but never league started it. And so that's what I plan to do. And then about 15 minutes before league launch, I decided to go Bone Shatter Slayer in hardcore.
So a mistake?
Yeah. Oh, a grievous mistake. So naturally, to me, the league mechanic wasn't that great because, well, you got to stand still for melee. You have to be in melee range. Everything's hitting you from range also. Like you're fighting 2 guardians at the same time. Or, well, you were saying guardians earlier, and now it's stuck in my head. But 2 of the guards at the same time. And by fighting multiple ones at the same time and being in melee range with one and not melee range with another, you're still taking full resolve damage. So Bone Shatter wasn't great. And it's single targets, well, ass. So it was fun. Super fun build. You can zoom maps at the beginning. So much fun to Bone Zone. But eventually I died to Searing Exarch. I played a lot at the beginning and didn't sleep.
Well, evidently, if you made it all the way to Exarch.
Yeah, after that like long session, I decided to go to bed, and I was like, you know what? Log back in. Try doing Exarch fight, because you're not going to be able to sleep without that. And when you're that sleep deprived and you've only done the fight a very limited amount of times, the words incineration sound a lot like annihilation. Yeah.
Them all like echo in his head.
And the second I realized he said incineration, I went to leap slam away, and then I flame dashed halfway back into him. And I should have just logged instead of trying to actually make it out. But the best part is it was after the ball phase. Like the ball phase had just ended. Exarch was at 25%, and I was Slayer, so almost in call range. And so I died just seeing Exarch that close to death. It was really sad. But you know what? It was for the best. I switched to Seismic, and oh my god, the league mechanic is fun now.
Yeah.
Huh. Weird.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we're going to talk about it a little bit more. I'm actually a little bit surprised with how the league mechanic reinforces like all the like the build archetypes that were already sort of strong, that they become stronger in this league with how it works. But yeah. Balor, how's your Venom Geyer going?
Ooh, I mean, it started pretty rough. I'm not going to lie. A lot of experimentation of things not behaving how I thought they were going to behave. And then I realized that all the Venom Geyer builds, I'm pretty sure are wrong. Okay. So we had to make some changes and abandon everything we got taught about Venom Geyer. But now it's running really well. I can now actually do the league mechanic on it, and it's great. But there's something weird going on with this skill that I don't really understand yet, which is if you take point blank, you lose damage. But the build, literally the build's job is to whirling blades on top of a mob backwards and forward. I couldn't be more point blank if I tried. The only explanation I have is that I think it's possible that the stored blades that come back
Restore the
remember
distance.
the distance they've traveled.
Oh boy.
But every guide for this has point blank in it. And it should. I would have put point blank in it. I would have thought that as well. But I don't think it's right. I took point blank off and instantly gained 10%-ish DPS, but my clear went through the roof. And I was like, what's happening here? And so that's led to a lot of different changes now that I'm thinking along those lines. And now it feels way better. I can kill stuff from the other side of the screen. I don't have to whirl on top of them anymore. It's great.
Wait, real quick though, for Val Venom Gyre, do the Venom Gyres that's surround you, do they move while they're surrounding you, or do they stay static?
I mean,
they circle
visually,
around
they're all circling me, but they don't hit anything. So it could just be a visual thing.
Well, the circling might be the projectiles moving and them storing that distance.
It could be. It was only slightly more DPS to drop point blank. And obviously it doesn't, none of that shows in Path of Building. It's just, I was killing stuff slightly quicker, losing it. But then you get all you clear back. Like point blank has a huge negative if you're not using it, right? If you're not actually using the point blank properly, that downside is a lot. So, yeah. Happy about it now, though.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. For a moment, I was like, wait, what is this footage? Like, is this sped up? Because it was so zoomy, but I actually was running it on 1.5 times speed. So now it looks about right. I mean, it's still zoomy.
It's
very,
already
very fast.
zoomy. A 1.5 speed would look like I was already in a headhunter.
Yeah, that's exactly. I was like, where are the headhunter buffs? You also leveled with
the game now.
Mm.
You now get those freely every so often.
True, although that could be risky to some degree. We don't know. There's like one special rare mob that lets you steal its mods, something.
Yeah.
And apparently we don't know for sure, but like it's been theorized that you could steal LE conversion mods in an LE reflect map as a pure fizz build and then kill yourself to reflect.
I was also worried about that, but I imagine we'd have a clip or a Reddit post or a video showing it by now.
Yeah.
If it could happen.
It probably can, but a lot of builds are using brutality anyways, so unless you leap slam on top of something and that's what's going to kill them and yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing Poison Blade Flurry. I'm using Void Manipulation, so you can't deal elemental damage. So, yeah. Either Void Manip or Brutality.
The league is still pretty young. I'm sure we'll see some kind of high-profile rip from someone posted on Reddit, and then it'll be proven.
Oh, it's going to be so juicy, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I can just picture, like, Chris in his Italian leather chair at the GGG offices, hands behind his head, watching this rip clip going, yes, yes.
Die.
Yeah, so Ballard, you also leveled with Poison's Concoction, right?
No,
you just went Venom Guy from the start, or what was
no,
the plan
I
there?
just did my normal Bow Deadeye League start. I'm super comfortable with it. Like, it's not the strongest
we talked
in the
about
world, but because I'm so practiced and good at it, because it's been my league start for like a year now, like I am very comfortable. So I just was bows the whole time, and I actually found like a disgusting Marketh bow. So I ended up staying Lightning Arrow Deadeye until like early red maps, because I had to make quite a good claw to warrant changing. But yeah, it went smooth, exactly as expected. Bow league starts are actually great now, by the way. Like,
what makes the difference?
You can't have a run. As far as my experience goes, you cannot have a run where you don't find a decent bow on the ground. The bow changes that happened a few leagues back, where they changed the range of all the rolls of everything, I haven't had a single run where I don't have a good bow. Not one.
Sounds good.
They need to do that to the other weapon types, by the way.
What would you say it's comparable to? Like Bone Shatter, maybe, or like in terms of damage, like single target?
Honestly, if you're doing it right, it's not quite as good as Traps is, but while leveling, it's that high. While in the campaign, it doesn't stay that high. Traps just keep scaling, but I'm pretty close to a Trapper in damage while in the campaign.
So so I did Val Blade Flurry. I was like super swayed by GGG's promo material. I was like, I haven't played a Blade Flurry build in years, and now they're buffing it and they're giving it that Val build, the Val skill, then that looks really good, and it solves like a problem because Blade Flurry generally used to be, when it was at the height of its time, it used to be used as a single target setup in Reave builds, right? People reaved around, cleared the map, and then for the map boss, they did the Blade Flurry. But now you don't need to use Reave to have decent clear in Blade Flurry build, because you can actually use Val Blade Flurry. It becomes available so often. It doesn't need very many souls. It doesn't have a very long soul gain prevention. I can use it multiple times within the same breach or the same leak mechanic encounter or expedition or something like that. And it just screen clears so beautifully. I mean, the more denser the screen, the more it clears, because it creates an AoE on every single individual monsters and everything overlaps. And it's insane for clear. On a single target, I was struggling so hard. I was so mad and suffering so hard for switching out of Poisonous Concoction. I should have stayed Poisonous Concoction for like 2 or 3 solid days before Blade Flurry, really. It was so bad after I transitioned before maps. And I was the butt of so many jokes in the stream chat and in my YouTube video. And people are like, why are you even playing this build? Like, what are your endgame goals with a build that's slightly tanky and deals 0 damage? But I managed to get some gear and got my hands on some divines. Actually, when I recorded my first video, I walked into a betrayal encounter and just dropped 3 divines from Hillock. Just like drop some currency, 3 divines on the ground. I was like, oh yeah. And then spent that on a on the what's it called? The Covenant, right? For the level 29 added chaos damage support, which is basically the same value as, someone told me it's 3 times as much damage as a level 6 empowered awakened added chaos damage, something like that. It's crazy how much damage it is, and so I'm running on a pseudo 6 link with that, and really good. Still not quite enough, but yesterday I bought two circle rings, the of Nostalgia with the Herald of Agony buff effect and poison or chaos damage during Herald of Agony, and now I feel like slowly but surely we're getting to that juicy damage. There's still a couple of upgrades I have planned, but I definitely have a POB that's in the millions of poison DPS, and I can't wait to get there.
You're just going to get damage.
Hopefully. Because like my Forbidden Sanctum runs have been really bad before the Circles of Nostalgia. It just takes so long to ramp up enough poisons so that the things die. And obviously with Seismic Trap, you don't have that problem because you don't have to stand next to the boss while you ramp up the poisons, right? You just stand around the corner and wait and laugh about how the boss just stands there in the AoE. So talking about the leak mechanic, before we go into that, how obvious was the quest line in the Fellshrine ruins to you? I'm curious, because it was super unobvious to me.
As in red maps, before I even knew about it.
I read some random comment on Reddit about pacts, and I was like, oh yeah, how do you get those? And then someone else said Act 7. I go, okay, let's go follow the breadcrumbs.
When I polled chat, over half of us didn't even know it. That led to me immediately making a YouTube video. Like, if half of the people active in Twitch don't have both quests, how many people are missing these quests? They were not obvious.
Yeah. I feel like they always try to do these like hook-ins, tie-ins into the quest line and into the playthrough mostly for newer players so that they get caught up. But now I felt like this was really counterproductive this time. It's like for new players, super unobvious. Even for experienced players, it was like so unobvious. And for me, it wasn't Act 7. For me, it was already Act 2. I mean, I met her in Act 2 when I went into Fellshrine to go to the crypt to do my trial, but I didn't pay attention to what she said, and I was like, this is just fluff. This doesn't matter. And then like when I was doing my runs, I was like, where are the relics? Where do you put the relics? Where do you get relics? I didn't have relics, and then people told me, oh, you need to still go to Act 2 Fellshrine ruins. You need to go to the actual sanctum. Super
did any
unintuitive.
of us get it on our first playthrough, both quests, 2 and 7?
I got the first one, but only because I happened to run by the Fell Shrine ruins. I did not go inside, but she just sort of stopped, and I kept running, and I went, bye, all right, I'll just see you later. And I just never had to go back to Act 2.
Saw it.
Oh, yeah.
Still didn't do the quest.
Oh, yeah. No, I just kept running.
What's interesting there is that when you enter the Fell Shrine from the crossroads, then she's there at the entrance, right? And she walks with you and she talks
Not
to you.
always.
I thought always, but what happens is that oftentimes you run to the crypt, get the waypoint, and ignore everything on the way there and go there later to do the trial, right? You just want the waypoint so you can grab it later. And then when you go from the crypt into the Fell Shrine, she's not at the entrance. She only spawns at the entrance from the crossroads. So that was what kind of broke my neck there, because I just ran the waypoint and came back later. And then when I entered Fell Shrine, she wasn't even there. If Chad wouldn't have been there to insist for me to look for the Fell Shrine, I would have been like, well, there is no quest here. It's not in the quest log. If you go into the, they beautifully tied the Nico and the Einhar and the Alva all into the quest log. So it actually tells you go to this and that zone and do this or that encounter. It doesn't happen for this league. So a little bit rough for new players, but I mean, it also gives us as content creators the chance to make helpful content that people can be inspired by.
Is that why I don't have any relics? No, I'm
Wait,
kidding. I'm totally messing with you guys. But it was very unobvious. Basically, I just wanted to get rid of the quest. That's the reason why I did it. And then I found out, oh, okay, that allowed me to actually do the relic stuff after. Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
And you have to talk to her first before you can go into Fell Shrine to find her. I'm pretty sure, at least. I don't remember. I thought I remember going into Fell Shrine and she wasn't there, and then going to talk to her in town, then walking into Fell Shrine and she was.
You don't have to, like all other quests, you can just do it, but without any indication of what to do. So if you can just see the downstairs area on the map, walk over to it, go in for no reason because there's no quest thing above it, and then she'll be inside and you can talk to her and that completes the quest. You don't actually have to do the town thing, but you don't get any indication to do it at all. She doesn't walk with you if you haven't talked to her, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and if you talk to her in Act 7 town, she actually tells you to go to Fell Shrine, but if you don't talk to her, you'll never find out unless you randomly walk into the Forbidden Sanctum in Fell Shrine Act 7 again. Which, I mean, would you even assume that it's there as well? Like it is in Act 2? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm unclear about whether this sort of introduction to the league mechanic was intentional or how much of it was we're too busy getting the actual mechanic to work gameplay-wise. We'll just toss it in the campaign and let them discover it and call that a feature. I kind of hope it was that they were too busy and, this isn't going to happen again, but, at least we can get the info out there and it's not too hard to recover from.
The idea of having the intro quest be in the campaign is great. And we've done it many, many times before. We just normally see it in Act 1, leaving the town, right in front of your face. It's in a guaranteed place that you can't miss. I think that's the change this time, is it wasn't in a guaranteed place you cannot miss. Right? If you want to do things like that, I think it's probably important to have it in a zone that everyone, no matter what, must see. So either it's immediately out of town or it's like in front of a boss that's required for progression that you couldn't possibly skip, or like it's in a place where you couldn't not see it, rather than just out the middle of Fell Shrine Ruins. Like I didn't even go to Fell Shrine Ruins. I leveled in a group. Whichever one of our group did that one, which is just whoever got there first, didn't see it. So our whole group wouldn't have it.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Like when you do group leveling, if someone runs the crypt and ports everyone into the crypt, like most people don't even enter the Fell Shrine. That was maybe not the best tactical placement for the introduction quest there.
Yeah, doing it in a non-mandatory area in a way, not a good look.
Well, but like I said, luckily we have this whole content creator situation with PoE where there's a very tight-knit community between all the players and the content creators. So we get the message across. I'm pretty sure most people are aware of it now.
Well, that's almost the beauty of like streaming and being content creator for Path of Exile, because frankly, number one, there's very few tutorials within the game. Very, very few. And that allows us to have either new players or veteran players who don't understand a mechanic or an interaction or whatever, sit in the stream and ask questions, and then you get to answer the questions, but you shouldn't have to do that. Like, GGG kind of, I don't think they rely on their streaming community, but a lot of players rely on the streaming community to be able to articulate these thoughts and messages and ideologies to the viewer base. Really, Path of Exile could do with a lot more tutorials within the game and much more streamlined tutorials, ones that are obvious and heavy-handed and can actually articulate whatever thought GGG had as to why they do certain things, like mechanically or storyline-wise or anything of that sort. Like, if you want to learn storyline stuff or lore, you have to go to Kitten Cat Noodle's channel. You can't really get by anything else. If you want to learn mechanics, there's tons of players out there for that. And yeah, it's just kind of wasted potential.
I think it's left over from years and years and years ago. Because way back in the day, like we're thinking there's only three acts, right? And you do them 3 times. Like from there on, back when the game was that small, they didn't tell us anything ever, nearly. They would tell us pretty much nothing. Patch notes were nearly empty. No one was pulling out the GGPK file to like troll for data or anything like that. We didn't know anything. And part of what built the community when it was that small was the community as a whole worked together to figure everything out, which is also why for like the longest time, PoE was like the most friendly community game you could find, because if we didn't all work together, we'd all know nothing. I think that worked really well when it was like a game that a few thousand people were playing. It doesn't necessarily work very well when it's a game that a few 100,000 people are playing. So
I think also the core difference, though, I like your example a lot, but the core difference between league mechanics then and now is the league mechanics now have a lot more like
they're a lot
story
more
and introduction behind them. Like you need a big golden arrow pointing you to here's the start of the journey, whereas league mechanics back then were just monsters are faster now, or you kill something and all of a sudden a big beyond boss pops out and starts shooting sparks at your face, and you can't avoid that, right? That's the big golden arrow.
Yeah, God, the scope of what a league mechanic is or has to be, also the expectations is so inflated in comparison to back then. I mean, we were really happy with just a handful of new monster mods and some unique items, and let's go, just play the same game over and over.
Well, also, like, okay, so obviously gaming has changed quite substantially. Path of Exile has changed quite substantially, but at the same time, way back in the day, Path of Exile was new-ish, right? And so you would get new players joining it quite readily because it was a newer game. It was exciting. People were talking about it. And now it's kind of known within a lot of communities and a lot of games. Gamers will know Path of Exile. A lot of them will, at least. But the thing is, a lot of them haven't tried it because it is daunting to get into at this point. It isn't just simply because of a lack of tutorials. It's because there is so much game knowledge that is developed over so much time. Like, if you haven't played Dota and you jump into playing Dota right now, you are going to be extremely lost. There's 100 heroes to learn. And that's kind of how Path of Exile is now. It's been compounded on so many times from new leagues coming out every 3 months, which bless GGG for this amazing schedule of putting out new content, but also without, putting out proper tutorials for that content to initially start off with that content, you now have all this backlogged information that is never going to get put out to a new player that jumps in. To me, it's like, okay, I've never done math before. Here's your calculus homework. Have fun. Yeah, there's a lot to learn before I get to that point. And a new player is not going to really jump in. Like, I've had friends try to play the game now. Being a streamer for it and loving the game, I always recommend it to everybody. But I also have to stop recommending it to friends because none of them will stick to it at this point because there's such an insurmountable amount of knowledge that they need to learn before they can really play the game. But
yeah, it only appeals to a very, very specific kind of audience when you don't have like a already established like social network or like streamer that you watch where you can like absorb knowledge or something like that. Just for like a single player like downloading the game, yeah, it doesn't even compare to back then when I started 2014. It's so massive. But honestly, I mean, I played League of Legends until 2014, and between 2014 and now, League of Legends has changed so much. I wouldn't like want to commit the amount of time that I need to get back into that to play that on a level where I would actually enjoy it again. So yeah.
Well, that was a question that I had also. Like, if I was to, or if any of you guys were to pick up Path of Exile right now and not ever having played it before, do you think it would be a game that you would actually try to play? Or do you think it would just be way too daunting?
I love it. I love the complexity. That's what attracts me to new games now. When I'm like, oh, I could spend 200 hours in here and still not have any clue what I'm going on.
Yeah, I think I'm the same way.
I like that.
Looking at the games I enjoy playing right now, they all have a level of difficulty to them and complexity to them that I think you can find in PoE as well. So it's a personality type thing, definitely.
I think for me it is like my personality has changed or my expectation in regards to games, or like what I want out of a game has changed so massively by playing Path of Exile that if I was the same person that I am now and I'd be without any Path of Exile experience, but for some other reasons got to the same point, I would probably like it. But if it was the same game that it is now presented to me the way I was when I started playing the game, I could totally see that it would have probably scared me off, because it's like super complex, like any MMORPG or something like that. I mean, it's not MMO, but it has so many systems and so many little things that you have to learn. I mean, really, back then when I started, there wasn't essences, there wasn't fossils, there wasn't harvest, there wasn't like all these crafting methods. You just had basic currency and some drops, and yeah, that's that. Have fun for 3 months, right? And now we have these super complex systems. So how do you experience the super complex system of the Forbidden Sanctum? I mean, it's not that complex. We had more complex in the past, but it does definitely, in terms of complexities, range like somewhere in between like the simple leagues and stuff like Heist or Betrayal. Did you right away like try and play it during leveling, or did you like wait until later?
I think I got the sense when I was leveling that it wasn't really going to offer me anything that would help me level faster or get to maps faster. To me, it seems like and forgive me if I'm jumping ahead of it in the conversation here, but to me, it seems a very like later league focused mechanic, to where like the early rewards you get don't really support you very much early on. So I didn't really do much of it early on, but beyond to just dip my toes in it, see how it played, and then think about how I might engage with it later once my character gets stronger and I can more reliably complete them. With respect to the complexity issue, yeah, I think it's pretty on par with other mechanics we've had in the past. Nothing particularly stands out there. It's pretty intuitive. I mean, we've all played roguelikes or seen how they work and understand it. And you can have debates about whether it's a good roguelike or not. But in general, I think I'm not finding that there's too much of a barrier to enjoying it once you're actually in it.
Fair.
I think you brought up a good point, though. Oh yeah, build choice definitely does matter for that.
Yeah.
But you brought up a good point of it not really helping you while leveling. And I agree. That's why I didn't touch it. I typically don't really touch the league mechanic anyways, because as a hardcore player, I want to get to maps quicker and just push a little bit faster. And it's not going to help me push. And I know it wasn't going to help me push because there isn't really anything inside of it that's going to help me while leveling. The relics are found a little bit later, especially the sanctified relics. So they're not going to be a leveling item for you. And then with the rewards being currency and only currency, pretty much, currency doesn't really help you a ton while leveling because currency is a randomized outcome. So the more of it that you have, the easier it is to be able to actually utilize it for that random outcome that you're looking for. So it's not really going to help me while leveling. 2 Chaos Orbs isn't going to make or break my leveling process at all.
Yeah, I had the feeling that like it's really good early on, like because obviously on a league start you're basically playing SSF, so it's the same as SSF. But in SSF, I definitely do like a couple of sanctums early on, like in Act 1 or Act 2, in order to get just a basic supply of alterations and transmutations going for the vendor recipes and the resist crafts and stuff like that. Because I feel there's also not too much risk involved, right? You go into the sanctum. First of all, they don't do that much damage early on. Like you're way more likely to get your resolve to 0 than you are to actually die in it. And yeah, if you just get, depending on your RNG, obviously how your first sanctum is rolled, but you just have to get through like 1 or 2 rooms, and then you get to the first room that offers you rewards, and then usually you can pick like transmutations, chromatics, or alterations as like an instant payout. And I think that's really good to do like 2 or 3 times early on if you're starting on League Start or in SSF, right? But then it's not good for a whole long time until you like hit basically map level, and then the rewards get noticeably better. And hopefully you're built also to the point that you can actually complete a floor or 2. And then as soon as you can like make it past the first floor, it feels, almost worth doing. But I've seen people who completed the entire thing and they got a sick load of rewards, so I'm actually really looking forward to that. So, Balor, how much of the league did you do on the starting weekend, and when did you start, and what was your experience with it?
I did a little tiny bit in Act 1, and then pretty much the same thing. I was like, this looks really, really fun. Like, I knew immediately that I liked the league mechanic, but also that I probably wasn't going to do any more of it. And I just like ran all the way to basically red maps before I started doing it again. And I'm getting into it now. It's really fun. It's exactly what I thought it would be. I do think they've nailed it, but yeah, I really didn't touch it much at all until red maps. I was like, this is just going to slow me down. So bye.
Yeah, fair enough. And also the way that the league mechanic works, like you really want to have top of the line damage, and you really want like to have all the mobility and the utility that your build has in the end game setup. Yeah. Like, because the league mechanic is basically the same whether you do it in Act 1 or in map level, right? In terms of like how the monsters move and how they animate. Maybe they scale up a little bit with action speed and stuff like that. I haven't looked at that, but certainly not as much as your character changes from Act 1 to map level, right? Like you just get so much faster with your movement animations, with like movement speed and all that. It's not fun early on. But I mean, I've seen people say that in Ruthless they've been playing it, right? And you can do it. So in Ruthless you don't have movement skills. You basically don't even have movement boots. So yeah, I'm impressed when people do it there. It's really a testimony of mechanical skill and like learning the boss animations really fast.
Yeah, Ruthless is definitely a whole other beast, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some Ruthless players' perspectives on this league mechanic in particular, where it's almost entirely movement skill based as opposed to just stand and fight. But just to echo everyone else's thought here about the mechanic, I mean, I guess like by saying we're skipping it isn't really us saying we don't like it. It's just we kind of recognize that there isn't much for us there, and that we can't wait to get to it when it feels more relevant to do.
Oh yeah. Like, I love it. I actually think it's great. And I thought that even in Act 1, I was like, this looks really fun. But it's not going to help me progress quicker. So yeah. I'll see it later.
Yeah, it's clear they've done a lot of work designing the mechanic in a sort of self-contained way. A lot of the rewards and buffs and debuffs you get have to do with the resolve bar or the Aureus coins. But there isn't much of it that's relevant to the rest of the game, at least early on. Not until you are able to more reliably complete floors and sanctums, etc. And so, yeah, in my opinion, as I was playing, I just figured, let me wait to engage with it until I can actually get those best rewards and get things I need to actually get to that point.
Yeah. And again, the Sanctum doesn't change a whole lot. That's one of my frustrations that I had early on with it. I mean, I'm slowly getting used to how it actually is, and I'm pretty sure there is a point to it, right? Like they obviously thought about how they want to do it. But like what I noticed is that monster density, or like the amount of monsters in the rooms, doesn't really scale up into maps as it does with other mechanics, right? Like, I mean, obviously maps are way more dense than the act zones, but whether you do the Sanctum in acts or in maps, you get about the same amount of monsters, maybe a couple more of the unique guards, right? And that's what frustrated me early on, was that, granted, I was playing a really shitty version of my build at that point, and every guard took like at least 10 seconds to fight with, and I was getting frustrated at like all the, the repetitiveness of the different guards, the fire guy, the ice guy, the lightning guy, the slam guy, the split guy, and I don't know how they even called, but I was getting frustrated because, I don't know, they felt so, I don't even know what it was. I guess I was just unhappy with my lack of success against them, and was trying to blame it somewhere. But like last league, when I entered Lake of Kalandra the first times, I was really disappointed that they just reused invasion bosses, right? And here there's like very little reused content. We actually get like new stuff, new animations, new little boss fights, if you will. And I'm really happy with that, and I want to appreciate that for what it is, rather than being upset about it. How did you find your way around the resolve mechanic? Did it directly feel good, or did it take a while to pay attention to a second health bar that wasn't exactly at the same place where you normally look in order to look when you're gonna die?
If there was more feedback when you got hit, I think that would feel a lot better. And that was the very first thing I said about the resolve bar, which, I'm fine looking at my resolve every so often. It's a pretty big bar at the bottom there. It's not like your health bar, which is tiny above the character. But if there was some sort of feedback, like, I mean, you play Hades, your character gets like knocked back a little bit and it turns red for a brief second, so you know you've gotten hit by something. And that's kind of a cornerstone of almost any game when you get hit by something, when you're supposed to dodge things. And without that, it feels kind of weird. Otherwise, yeah, the bar is easy enough to see,
The bit that feels the weirdest to me is that you lose resolve for getting hit by an auto attack, not just abilities. And that's weird. I kind of feel like I should be able to get hit by an auto attack and just not lose any resolve. Shouldn't count. I feel like you should have to dodge abilities, but not auto attacks.
You mean
Maybe
auto
that's
attacks
just
from
me.
like the random zombies that are wandering around, or
or just the guards that are there or whatever. Like, they do abilities probably 70% of the time, but when they're not doing that, they're just autoing you. And if you have to be close to them to deal damage, that's like your only window to deal damage if you have to melee them. But then if you do that, they melee you back, and then you lose resolve. I feel like it wouldn't take much away if melee just didn't do that.
So like,
What
yeah,
if they just didn't auto attack?
Or that. Like, they do only spend about 30% of their time auto attacking, even if you're trying to face tank them, which obviously you can't do. But if you try and you watch, most of the time they're doing abilities. So having to dodge them, great. Having to dodge an auto attack feels. But otherwise, it feels fine. My only other one problem is a streamer problem. I don't know if the rest of you have noticed. There's nowhere for my camera to go that doesn't overall, like, where do I put my camera? What? GGG has taken and put league mechanics in every single space on the screen, and there's nowhere left for me.
Yeah, they haven't thought about where to put your face on the UI there, Baylor.
Yeah.
The mana
maybe
globe,
they should take that
obviously.
into account. They should, when they're playtesting, just Chris Wilson's head in various areas on the screen. Just move it around and see where they should place Chris Wilson's head, and that'll leave some room for our cameras, right?
I would be a fan.
Comes with your very own like testing kit too, so that you can like put that on your stream and then just manipulate Chris's head. So, before the league mechanic comes out, where you can put your camera. We're going to send it out to everybody.
Yeah, that's actually a fair point. Although I'm pretty sure that they themselves have that same problem that we feel is like they also don't know where to put new UI elements when they're making a new league or adding new features. It's like, oh shit, where would you put that? I'm really liking the quality of life. We haven't talked about that yet, but like the league mechanic felt right in that sense from the start that, you know, you walk up to the thing, you get slurped up by the bubble, right? The animation is cool, a cool visual, and you go in, and then if you don't decide to instantly run it and you press the button to store the room for later, it just directly ports you back out. That was so good and so mind-blowing that is like you didn't have to walk out yourself anymore.
Yeah, it is quite nice. I'm not personally not really a fan of the, you know, getting vortexed in. It's been a bit disruptive for me a couple of times, although I can see some cases where maybe you know, if you can't reach your logout macro button fast enough, you just jump into one of those things to escape something and then log out.
No, it's like I definitely can imagine when you're like zooming around and you're shield charging and you're spam clicking a lot that it can happen that you actually accidentally like go up to it and get sucked up without wanting. Hasn't happened to me a single time. I've had people in chat tell me, "Oh God, if I get sucked up one more time by this leak mechanic, I'm gonna rage quit," or something like that. Especially because they also don't like the leak mechanic.
It is a little jarring. Like for example, I got sucked up once when I was chasing a transport across the map.
It can be frustrating. Yeah, you lose valuable seconds there.
Like for example, when you're doing a ritual, it shuts off portals that got caught in the ritual, right? I think it might be good if they did something similar. If you're in the middle of something, they could just disable entering. But there are, I'm sure, all kinds of things to consider there. That
I feel like you can walk up fairly close though without getting sucked up. Maybe I haven't done like enough testing or so, but like if you like shield charge or jump directly on top of it, do you get sucked up? I feel, and you can walk up fairly close
leap slam.
Oh right,
yeah, and
I was so mad.
It's also worse whenever you don't pay attention, right? Because my little goblin brain sees a symbol on the minimap. And for 9 years, a symbol on the minimap is something I have to run over to. Run through it, well through it, leap through it, shield charge through it, whatever. Like that's every league mechanic in existence. I either need to go to or through. Like,
I'm sure the problem is especially worse for you, Balor, because you're whirling blades everywhere.
Oh yeah, it's like super fast.
So I used to mountain bike, and the first thing that they teach you is look where you want to go. If there's a rock there that you don't want to hit, do not look at the rock. Don't look at that damn thing, because you will go right at it. And guess what? There's an icon on the mini map. There's an icon right there. I'm leap slamming. Don't go into it. Yeah, jump right on top of that stupid thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was so mad on day one because I did not consent to getting sucked. I didn't click the thing. If I click the thing, then I go into the thing, right? That's how it works. But yeah, maybe there should be like a little consent button in the UI that you click the consent button and it allows you to turn that on and off, because it's a really cool animation. It's a really cool little mechanical thing. It's a neat little addition, but my God, is it infuriating when you do not want to go in that thing. It's so aggravating, especially because it feels like you're drowning in like Eater of Souls fight.
Oh, right.
It's that same type of animation, and that just makes me panic viscerally every damn time. Yeah. So, is what it is. Also, when you say quality of life, though, keep in mind that by clicking on the sanctum icon of the room that you want to go into, it then opens a door for you to then go walk over and go into that room rather than just taking you to that room. Can it just take you to the room? Nice.
I think that's a double-edged sword. I kind of enjoy that there's this safe space where you don't, I mean, you're right. You could just stay there until you click the room and then get taken to the room automatically. So you're probably right. But I kind of enjoy that it's like, you know, step by step, and there's very many safe spaces while you do this, and you can like do a room and then go AFK afterwards because you know that there's nothing happening and stuff. But I guess what you're saying is like why do we directly get ported out when we store it? But if we decide to do a room, why do we have to walk over to it? Which is reasonable. Another thing that made the big difference for me personally, as I told you I didn't find out about the relics by unlocking the relics by doing the Fell Shrine in Act 2. So I was trying a couple of runs, and when I eventually noticed, I don't have relics, and how do I get this? And it's not something that I unlock during the runs themselves. And people explained to me in chat that I have to do these quests and all that. I noticed that it became a lot easier as soon as I got a couple of relics in the stash and the relic stash, because you get decent bonuses from the relics. Not the first one that you get from the quest. That one's just 3% more Oreo coins or something like that. But when you find relics actually during your runs, I directly found one that gave me resolve whenever I enter a new floor or a new room or something like that, or at the end of I don't know, something like that. And that makes it so much easier when you have an influx of resolve. Exactly. I have one that gives me 43 inspiration, which is the energy shield that protects your resolve every time I enter a new floor. And it just feels way more manageable, because all the little buffs, each individual relic doesn't do a whole lot, but all of them coming together, when you have 3 or 4 of them active, they do contribute quite a bit to making it easier. Is the Balor gameplay on 2.5 speed again? What is happening here? No. Now you're actually just super fast.
That looks normal.
That's 0.75 speed, actually.
What the fuck, dude?
Real quick, when talking about those relics, just a heads up for anybody who decides to venture into hardcore. If you die, you lose all the relics.
Oh, that sucks.
All of them. And the thing is, you can't remove them if you're mid-run. So if you're going to do something rippy, you can't remove your relics. You have to plan it all out to end your run, which is potentially 32 maps, to be able to remove your relics. Yeah.
How likely is it that you die in there? Like I said, I haven't died
if you die anywhere, in hardcore, if you lose your character, all the relics that were within your, not your stash, but within that run are all gone.
Not just if you die in the Sanctum, just if you die in a random map while you have a Sanctum active, because you can't take the relics out while the Sanctum's active, right?
That is harsh.
That's rough.
So my latest run, which actually I might complete, maybe I might actually get to the boss now that I'm not playing Bone Shatter. I have no relics for that one. 0. So
that's rough.
Yeah. It's not good times. I understand your Sanctified relic getting taken away, which, by the way, I should have thought about that one, because you can actually remove it. If you go to your character screen, there's a little tiny book there. If you click the book, you can actually remove your Sanctified relic whenever you want. I should have removed that and put it in the stash before I fought XR, because I didn't need it for that character, and it was a good one too. It had spell suppression. But anyways, the rest of your relics, those, you can't manipulate those once the run started. They're locked in.
Wait, how do you get the Sanctified relic slot anyway? Now that you brought it up,
I think it's just from a boss. Bosses can drop them randomly, it seems.
Okay.
I've only received 1 or 2 of them, I think, possibly, and they're both from bosses.
Okay, not the relic itself, but where do you unlock the slot to put the relic in? Does it automatically unlock when you get one? Once you get one, okay. Makes sense. Gotcha. All right. I guess I need to do some more bosses then. I've made it once past floor 2. Did the floor 2 boss, which I found extremely easy in comparison to the first floor boss, at least on a first attempt basis. But yeah, so
I had
far
the opposite experience personally. The first floor boss has been pretty trivial so far, but the second floor boss, I don't know if it's just boomer reflexes or what, but I'm just not understanding the telegraphing from the guy with the mace. I'll run away from his slam, and then all of a sudden there's another slam that's spell echoed onto me or something. I'm gonna have to watch some videos of someone else doing it to understand that one. But the second boss has been clowning on me pretty bad.
Interesting. Yeah, it didn't seem like a big problem to me at the time that I did it, but I don't remember the circumstances. It was probably a relatively low Sanctum compared to my character level, and just after I'd gotten an upgrade. And I haven't made it there again after that.
Good DPS trivializes a lot of it, and now that your DPS has improved quite substantially, I feel like you're going to just run through that second boss very
Probably.
easily.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. I hinted at that earlier. Like, kind of unfortunate that it just reinforces the archetypes that are already really strong, like damage via proxy and damage over time. Just seems so much better in the Sanctum than it seems already in the base game. And yeah, would have been interesting if the mechanic was somewhat forcing people to play different builds than the base game does. I mean, it does to some extent.
I don't particularly mind there being mechanics that certain archetypes are better for than others, but I got to thinking the other day, like, yeah, melee is quite clearly left in the dust with this one, and I wonder what mechanics are good for melee. Like, what mechanic is there out there in PoE that you would say, yes, play melee for that one?
Some boss fights are easier as melee because you want to stay in melee range anyway.
Which
but
ones?
Then you could do that with ranged as well. Which ones?
Yeah, careful when you try and go to bed, or like careful when you go try and throw the garbage out tonight, Aphelion. Like, you're going to go into the alleyway to drop the garbage out, and you're just going to hear, "Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games." And then that's the last thing you'll ever hear. Now that you've brought up that point.
I know. Look, I admitted that I've been having fun, so, you know, that's always a worry for me.
He's going to beat you up from melee range.
Here's the thing about melee, and there's going to be a melee enjoyer in chat somewhere who's just going to, like, hate me. But melee is bad at everything in almost every game you've ever played, and also in real life. Melee has been bad since cavemen figured out how to pick up rocks and throw them. If melee is something that you really, really like, great. But do be aware that you're bringing a stick to a gunfight. You can't expect it to go as well.
That's probably the most reasonable take that one can have around that. I mean, like, melee is just inherently flawed unless you change it such that it becomes essentially ranged.
Yeah, the few times that like melee has been good in the game is because you've gotten full screen coverage, or it's like a melee attack, but it fires projectiles and plays like a wander. Like, right, it's not. Or you've got so many strikes on the ground that happen automatically that you cover the entire screen in molten strike balls. Like, every time melee's actually been good, it's been melee just like in name, right? Like, it's been something, they've increased the range of that skill to the point where it plays like a spell or a bow or a wand or like some sort of range. That's just how it is. That doesn't mean don't play melee. If you really love it, play melee. Go ahead. Live your best life. But you've brought a stick to a gunfight. You don't get to complain that everyone else is OP compared to you. You put the stick down, pick up a ranged weapon like everybody else.
And before YouTube comments about a stick beating a gun at like 5 feet.
To take one out of Chris Rock's book, as Chris Rock put it way back in the day, you got pecs, I got techs. But you know what? Basically, Diablo 3 did one thing right. Just one thing. I know. I said the words. But
Chris is coming to your house, Tryxt.
Yeah. But melee inherently taking less damage. Just barbarians take less damage than other classes. That was actually kind of done right in a way, because you at least have that as a slight advantage to an extent, because you have a disadvantage by being in melee range. And Baylor's right. Every single game and in real life, I trained mixed martial arts for like 10 years. I will run away from every fight possible because guess what? None of them are in melee range. But it just inherently, melee is at a disadvantage. In whatever game you play, it will be at a disadvantage. But give them some sort of advantage of taking less damage, or, well, that's what Fortify's whole point is, right? Just give them something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Balor that, you know, in general, the archetype of being able to fight at range is generally just advantageous in almost every game you could ever play. But I mean, we are playing a game, and the designers are here to serve the fantasy of picking up a sword and a shield and smacking bad guys in the face with it. And it seems like with that kind of, I don't know if you could call it like a gameplay experience or a fantasy experience or whatever, it's lagging behind a bit for mechanics like this. And in the game in general, I think it can be argued. And yeah, it might be good to give that some attention.
Mm. Yeah, I wonder what they're going to do with it to make it good in PoE 2. Because, I mean, PoE 2 is the game that solves all the problems, right? So, obviously, melee is going to be good in PoE 2. I just wonder how.
It's not. It's never, ever going to be good. It literally it's.
Well, it's either not good or it's not really
flaw,
melee, but...
Melee's flaw that causes it problems is that it's melee range. You can't just overcome that. You can either get rid of the identity of melee by increasing the area to the size of nearly the full screen so they can play like ranged builds, or they're worse.
Or you can get close range damage that is much better than range damage, much more easily than you can on a ranged build, to the point where it's actually favorable. I mean, there's been points in the past like where melee has been the preferred build for some bossing. And to answer the side question from Tryxt earlier, where you asked which one, I can come up, like I don't do enough endgame bossing, but like a fight like Exile is much easier when you stand next to him. The animations are slow, you keep him on the screen, you know exactly when to step beside him and go behind him, and there's not really ever any reason to run far away from him because everything is controllable. Now, of course, the modern boss design is a little bit different, and there is exceptions to that. But I'm pretty sure that you could find examples of boss fights also in the end game where it's better to be melee range.
You can find individual mobs that are better to fight in melee range, and your ranged character just takes 3 steps forward and does the whole thing from there. That doesn't make melee good. That just means there's one fight that you don't suck ass for. But it doesn't.
Again, if your disadvantage would be compensated with having an easier time to get to certain thresholds, and I mean, there is systems in place where melee does have that. I mean, Fortify was intended to do that, but then we all know how that went with how it became available to everyone, and yeah. But without wanting to talk too much about the general like design of the game and recurring topics like melee versus ranged, how do you feel about the reward structure of the? Because I've heard very different things. I've heard like people a lot, like the general consensus in my chat was always it's not rewarding enough, especially from the people who did a whole lot of it. But then you have like Ventura who tweets about it regularly. I mean, to some degree also trolling all the people who are not getting very far, but he did get some really good loot from his runs when he did them completely, and he got like racked up all the afflictions and boons and stuff. So how is your subjective experience with that is my question. Maybe Tryxt go first. Or Aphelion, please. I just feel like no one wanted to go, and I have to name someone before everyone starts talking at the same time.
Yeah, no, I think as we discussed before, it's not very attractive to do it. And I think the mechanic does a really good job of being self-contained, which is a bit unfortunate considering, if you're playing a roguelike, that's the game. It's the roguelike, and all the buffs and boons and such you get and the curses, etc., stay contained within that game. But there's a whole other game around this roguelike that is the main focus, and the roguelike is the side content. So it seems like if you engage with the roguelike early on anyway, the majority of rewards have to do with the mechanic and not the rest of the game. Like Tryxt said, a couple of Chaos Orbs isn't going to make or break your run. So I'm looking forward to getting to later floors in high maps and seeing if there's something else out there that really feels worth target focusing on to the degree that you would say Heist or Expedition. I know that the Sanctified Relics are probably going to be amazing, and we've seen, I'm sure everyone here has seen the pictures of the Divine Showers and such on Reddit now, and that'll probably be a good thing to hear you guys talk about. But I haven't experienced that personally, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, the best I've gotten so far from the Sanctum has really been like Chaos or Regal. So I'm very much looking forward to being offered like a divine when I complete it. I mean, I'm never gonna complete it, at least not right now without further upgrades. But I've not had a reward offered to me at the end of the Sanctum that was compelling enough for me to say, okay, I'm foregoing my instant reward, or the reward at the end of the floor for that, because it just seems so far away to go to the end of the Sanctum, and it didn't feel really better. But like when I get to a point where it offers me like 2 divines or something like that, if I complete it, I might actually be like, oh, we're gonna try for it, and then also feel the big consequence when we don't get it. But yeah, what's your take on the risk reward situation, Tryxt? I'm curious.
So in hardcore, it doesn't really have much of a risk, or at least I didn't think it did until I saw Zizaran die, which he had to die for that to get fixed, I guess. If anybody saw his death, basically he didn't take any damage for resolve almost the whole time, and then he just got one shot by the final boss. Like his character got fully one shot. Apparently it was a bit of a bug, but anyways, my issue with the reward system is that it's very linear and it isn't very exciting, because it's just as simple as, here's currency. Okay, do you want to have currency now, or do you want to have currency later? If, say, they gave me like, if you finish the Sanctum run versus, you take a couple pieces of currency right now, you take some currency at the end of this floor. At the end of the Sanctum run, if you succeed, you get a sanctified relic, one of 3 options. Choose one of these 3 really nice sanctified relics that you can use outside of this realm to be able to increase your character further. But a divine orb, a couple of divine orbs maybe, again, as good as that is, it's not a compelling thing. Every single other League mechanic allows you to get items from other League mechanics or exceptionally well-rolled rares or something of that sort. They're compelling because you have a choice that you can make at that point. Do you want currency? Do you want a nice item? Do you want blight oils or something of that effect? But it's just simply basic currency, and that is, I don't know, it is boring, I think. Like, sure, cool, there can be a lot of divines at the very bottom floor. You get like 4 or 5 divines at the very end of the run, but you can get divines elsewhere to an extent. If I'm going to engage in the League mechanic, I want to have a variety of rewards that are compelling.
Yeah, and not just compelling, but like unique to that mechanic. Like, because the whole time you're asking yourself, yeah, I could get this divine from here in 32 maps, but I could just run Expedition a logbook or 2 and get a divine from Tujin, easily, and that would take less time. So why should I do the League mechanic? It's a question you got to answer, I think.
I don't think they're going to switch the rewards at all, but the League mechanic would feel so much better just with better rewards. And again, it's as simple as, you get 3 options at the end of the day. You get take now, take at the end of the floor, take once you complete the Sanctum. But what if you had multiple options within that option, right? That would be nice. Gives us more of that ultimatum type feel, that ritual type feel maybe, which weren't my favorite leagues, but at least they gave us options on what to pick.
Yeah, or maybe like a merchant option, replace the next reward currency offers with like item rewards or something like that. Yeah, that was my biggest concern. Before I talk more about this, Bella, what's your take on this?
It's really hard to tell, but I'm like juicing endgame wearing an inspired learning already, and I still feel like it's rewarding to run. Like I don't actually have a problem with its current rewards, and I'm only making. So usually I get to the end of floor 2. I haven't made it to the end of floor 3 yet. And I still feel rewarded for the amount of time it takes me.
Is that subjectively true or objectively true, or is that because you're having fun with the League mechanic as opposed to like?
I don't know. But like, I want to look too hard at it because, like, if I work it all out, and it's not worth running, I'll be real sad because I'm loving doing it. And it's fun, and I just want to keep doing it. So
there's a clear contrast really to Lake, because no one liked running the lakes, and people were just looking for good reasons to not run them.
Yeah, whereas I'm looking for a reason to keep running it because it's so fun.
Well, I mean, they say the best toothbrush is the one you actually use. So, the best currency making strat there for you, Baylor, is going to be, doing what you enjoy. And the league mechanic certainly does have drops. No one's contesting that. But I think the point I think Tryxt and to a lesser extent I was trying to bring up as well was that you can get those same drops doing other things. So what exactly is the compelling point of doing the league mechanic over anything else?
The relics are insane though.
Yeah, the relics are the one thing that is like a compelling reward that gives the league its identity, but the relics are not something that persists beyond the end of the league, right? They already said that that this is going to go away. So it's like, I feel like it would be massively beneficial if this had just similar to Delve, like a set of drop exclusive mods that you can only get here. You get random bases with mods that you can't get anywhere else in the game, or just fractured items, right? I mean, we get fractured items, and we were worried we wouldn't get a lot of them anymore. And we get enough of them from the reworked monster mods we're also going to talk about in a little bit. But like, just getting them from the league mechanic would be so cool. Even if you could work towards something, it's like, I want a specific base, or I want a specific mod type fractured, or something like that. Yeah.
Honestly,
I totally agree.
even if they gave us, like, at the end of this floor, get a major boon would be a compelling option too, because that further increases my run to be able to get further within the scope of the Sanctum. Because, like, yeah, sure, me getting a couple of Chaos Orbs doesn't really help my Sanctum run. And that's kind of the fun part about the Sanctum too, is to play in the Sanctum. Don't get me wrong, I am enjoying it. It's fun to play in and engage in. But it's not fun enough that it, exceeds the glaring issues within it. To me,
I don't know. The point from chat here is like really good though, because like other league mechanics, in order to become more rewarding, just shower me in stuff I can get elsewhere, fractured items or fossils or whatever. This one is giving me relics. It's the only place to get relics. Some of them are incredibly powerful. I think the only reason that anyone isn't feeling rewarded by relics right this second is because they haven't found good ones yet. And if we just like keep investing with them, like there are int stacking ones, there are deck stacking ones, there are charges, there's maximum charges. Like there's a friend of mine that I play with on day one got like an 8% movement speed charm. And was like, in it goes, lovely. And that was just like the first one he got. Like some of those charms are just generic little power boosts that are fun, and some of them are ridiculous. And I think this is more of a like long-term chase. Like we're hunting good charms.
Yeah, but if you're long-term chasing something, you also want it to persist outside of this league. Like, I don't know, for me, it's not really tangible enough.
Outside this league.
Yeah, but for some people it does. Like when you take that in-stacking sanctified relic, by the way, and you make a build around it, and then the league ends and it doesn't go core, and the relic is just gone, and your entire build is bricked, right? It just doesn't work anymore. Sure, like you and I and many other people don't play characters beyond the temp leagues, and they don't really care. I do keep my characters around though, and I like to keep them in a playable state to practice in permanent leagues though, or to reminisce.
I think almost any consideration for how would this work once the league is over? If you make any choices based on that at all, you're only ever going to make any league mechanic worse. If you're trying to limit it by, what could we let happen after the league is over, instead of what could be fun and engaging now during the league.
No, I get that. The future concerns are the poison for the now enjoyment, but what I'm trying to get at is, like, I don't know, the relics, they feel too self-contained to the league mechanic for me, because they're actually just items for the flavor of being items. Because they're account bound, you can't trade them. You can trade them between your characters, but to me they feel more like the sentinel tree that you put things in, or the Scourge progression system. Sure, those you eventually unlocked all the possibilities and you capped out. There's no individualization. These are a little bit random and there's a little bit more individual. But like basically what I said, that they're too contained within the thing. I want to get something out of the league that has nothing to do with the league and that gives me stuff outside of the league. And the sanctified relics are there, but they're just, for me, like just not enough. Like, I'd like to have something else that gives the league an own identity in terms of rewards. I'm not saying I'm not enjoying the relics, right? I just feel like the fact that they're presented to us as items is merely a flavor choice, and they are just like the in-league progression system. That's how I
I
look
just
at
want
them.
more relics. That's all. I just want more sanctified relics. They're great.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we also haven't really untapped the potential of them yet, I guess, because it's been, what, 72 hours so far?
Oh yeah, that's fair, and that goes for basically the entire conversation about the league mechanic. This is very much first impression based, and it's subject to change a lot, that impression, as soon as we figure out things and we all get better collectively as a community.
Yeah,
But
definitely. Like, a lot of this is just a function of your DPS, right? Like, eventually, in a month from now, we'll just be, straight one-shotting all the bosses and then picking up relics every other run.
Yeah, I don't know how rare they are at, because I haven't fought the end boss, but if they're more common off the end boss, that would be nice. But I do find it, again, like we talked about in the reward system, it would be nice to include those within the reward system. Something for me to strive towards, like, hey, you know what? Screw this currency. I could get a sanctified relic at the end. Hell yeah, I'm going to do that.
Mm.
Like, I'm risking it for that item because that's compelling.
Right. And then slowly but surely, is there any things that you want to touch upon with the league mechanic still? Because I'd say we move a little bit away from the league mechanic and expand the risk reward thing to the regular game, because there was a big problem with the perceived rewards last league, and there's been quite a few changes since last league start. How do you feel about like the general influx of rewards as you're progressing through the game and killing monsters? Is that in a good place right now? Did you get a lot of uniques? Did you get a reasonable amount of currency and rares?
So I'm finding more uniques than I did last league by far. That feels good. The rares having, almost like veiled drops. I don't know what I'm going to get from the mob. Feels kind of good. It does have some aspects where it's like, oh man, I spent like 7 minutes killing that mob and it dropped me 5 wisdom scrolls and 2 rare items. Nice. But it is what it is. Also, 5 minutes is a gross overstatement. They are nowhere near as tanky as Arch Nemesis, but they do have some tank to them still, like some very substantial tank, which I think is potentially a little bit overtuned personally. For some of the mods themselves. But otherwise, like, loot itself feels pretty good, aside from one weird thing: quality currency. Getting no GCPs whatsoever. I was not able to flip my level 20 gems because I didn't find enough GCPs for that to happen. Or like find enough superior gems for that to happen. Kind of weird.
I definitely felt more limited in that sense than other leagues, but I didn't feel like by now I was able to flip most of the gems that I was interested in flipping. So it may just be an outlier situation. Or either way, yours could be extremely unlucky, mine could be extremely lucky. It definitely did change, right? Because last league we got the Arch Nemesis quality currency, although they didn't give GCP, right? But maybe there was gem rewards. I don't know, but I also feel that last league we had more. But I also last league said that those things shouldn't be available in excess. You should always have like a meaningful decision. Do I use this or do I not use this? It shouldn't be a no-brainer that you just have enough to quality everything. That kind of defeats the purpose of quality currency, in my opinion. How about you, Aphelion?
I think loot feels pretty good. I'll go out on a limb here and say loot felt pretty good last league too. But I think what felt bad last league was the need to bring an MF color, or the perceived need to bring an MF color to activate the most out of your loot drops. I mean, really, all that was changed was that you see the same sort of loot piles minus the flask spam and quality currency spam and whatever the other one was that was annoying. They come in unknown orders now, as opposed to being able to predict when they drop. So for me, loot feels really good. I've generally found almost everything I needed, barring a spell of about 4 hours when I couldn't find a Vol Orb to run more red maps. And had to go back and run T4 Vol Pyramid a bunch of times for the Catalyst card. Self-found is fun. But generally, though, I've been in a good spot with loot. I think it feels good, and I'm happy with it.
I'm sure you know that as a solo self-found player. Just for anyone who doesn't know, if you're lacking Val Orbs and you have some excess Val Gems, you can trade 7 Val skill gems and 1 sacrifice fragment for a Val Orb.
Yeah, and I wish I'd had the foresight to pick up Vol Gems, but I didn't expect to run out of Vol Gems that much, or Vol Orbs that fast. It was I got in, I Vol'd 1 red map, and then I ran out of Vol Orbs because I decided to use my other 6 to flip my Seismic to 21. And it worked, but I paid the price for it.
Yeah. So, Balor, you were probably the most vocal critic of the loot situation last league that we've had here on the podcast. Maybe outside of Big Ducks. So how is your perception of the loot situation in this current iteration of the game?
I'd like to start by objecting to the use of the term perceived loot problems.
I didn't say there was a perceived loot problem. There was absolutely a loot problem.
Well, I mean, it doesn't change the fact that it was perceived. It's just when you use the word perceive, it implies that it's only the perception. But if it is an actual problem, it is also perceived as one often.
I just said it was.
That's
not
fair.
Good. But I knew loot was fixed before I even got to maps. I found myself even while leveling, going a little bit off my main path to kill a rare because a rare was there, or to kill a blue pack because rares and blue packs were going to drop loot for me, and I knew they would. There would be rare items on the floor. I might get uniques. Things might drop for me, and they did. And they did consistently. And we've still got the little mini loot goblins, but now instead of hunting for them, everything drops loot, and then we've got little loot goblins. They're not nearly as big and flashy as the ones we had before, but that was too much anyway. So now we're getting loot all the time, and then there's this little loot goblin of here's a little explosion of extra stuff, which is good. And now I'm happy to see a loot goblin. Not that I can see it before it dies, but like now I'm happy to have killed one. Whereas before, even when I went MFing last league, and you'd eventually find the currency one and be like, okay, there's my 37 divines. And it felt like a drag because I'd just spent the last 25 maps making nothing. And then you'd be like, okay, there's my profit all in one map. That took 4 hours to get to, and now I'm going to just start again getting nothing. And that's not happening anymore. I now get stuffers on the floor every single map, and I love it. I love it.
Isn't it nice getting incremental drops? That feels good.
Yeah.
Although
really
it would
good.
feel better if I got 500 fusings like that dude on Reddit, or 350 by one guy in our GSF. Got 350 fusings off one mob.
Yeah, it was mentioned to me that
nice.
could happen now that you get like several hundred fusings. That's crazy.
I got 4 6 links in Blood Aqueducts on League Start Day from one mob. One was an armor evasion hybrid that I was playing bows into Venom Gaia, so I just put it on. And one of them was a CI, was an energy shield chest, which I just gave immediately to a friend I was leveling with. And then one was a staff that I sold for like 50 chaos, and then the other one was some garbage tier 2-hander that got vended. But still, that was like 4 6 links were just on the floor in Blood Aqueducts.
You know what's really cool about that too is like to hear you talk about that story and talk about what happened. You're excited about it, right? You're having like a happy like recollection of it. Whereas last league, you would have rolled your eyes.
Yeah, like look at that, look at those 9 6 links on the floor.
That's interesting.
Like, look at it, it's great.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I wonder what the psychology is behind that.
Loot goblin psychology. Start your thesis now, boys. But you know the beauty also.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, when you're streaming, like there's a little bit of beauty in that where you find those 4-6 links and you're like, oh, this feels awesome. But I know I'm never going to hear the fucking end of it from chat. Oh, whatever. Take my loot and go. We're good.
I think part of it is because we can't tell there's a loot goblin. But I think the bigger part is because I'm not reliant on those loot goblins for all of my loot. And that's why it feels good. It feels good to hit a loot goblin now because I don't have to hit a loot goblin to get anything. Like normal loot is happening. And that makes it better.
I had a tab in my stash last league that I called my cringe tab. It had a lot of rarity gear in it. Whenever I would see Solaris touched or whatever touched, I'd open a portal, I'd go back to my cringe tab, and I'd put on all my cringe gear and come back in and kill the thing if I could. Probably sacrificing 3 or 4 portals in the process because I had like negative res, but
Mm-hmm.
Mine was called the Hall of Dumb, which also is where my fractured reflect physical items are. Like one thorns, cool. Fractured, awesome. That's going in the Hall of Dumb too.
we're having technical issues.
Froze. Nice. Perfect. That's
Taylor looks really happy.
My mic went muted again. And the I think
We can hear you.
Hear you?
Yeah, we can hear you. Baylor looks really happy. Aphelion looks a little bit concerned.
Man, I've been really happy for
That's just my
4
natural
days.
state. That's just my natural state. I'm always concerned.
all right, everything should be back to regular working order. That cutout timing, technical difficulties, guys. Yeah, we're operating on a very low budget setup here, guys. Just so you know, this is it's all subject to getting better at some point in the future, but
That's
we'll
why
get
we
there.
love you.
Anyway, well, you gotta make it work with what she had, right? I was thinking the entire time, what do I want to contribute to the loot discussion? And it's just, I'm happy. I was happy last league, but it definitely feels better this league. I'm getting more consistent, decent rewards, getting uniques that I can sell. Yesterday, I found 2 Maligaros. What's the name? 2 Maloney's quivers, the socket quivers. Found 2 of those within 1 hour. It's like one just like that, like a drop, and one from a boss in the Sanctum. And I think they go for like 40C a pop, 50C, something like that. So looking forward to making sales. And I've been doing a lot of sales, like softcore trade. Usually definitely last league I didn't make that many. No, last league I was hardcore trade. I mean, the last league I played softcore trade, I didn't make that many sales early on. So either I got better at pricing things and knowing what I want to sell, or both. I mean, I also definitely am getting more good things. There's more things that I look at and I'm like, oh, this might sell for a couple of KOs.
Do you feel like the trade
at all.
is more active now than at this point last league?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, certainly. I mean, people bailed out
Yeah.
like instantly after launch weekend.
People are buying my stuff.
That's got to be a good kind of metric for how the league is doing. If people are spamming you for things, or if things are pretty dead.
Oh yeah, I did at Ziri and got on my first at Ziri run. I got boots and then listed them without looking at the price, and I got spammed by so many people instantly because apparently I had to underprice them by like 50%.
A lot of league enjoyers.
Why would you list an obviously well-known item without checking the price?
I was just like, oh, let's just dump it into this tab and take care of it after the next couple of runs, right? And then. Like, you don't want to put it like into a tab where you forget about it, so you put it into a tab that's already listed for a value. And when you get spammed too much, I mean, I'm not going to instantly sell it because I'm busy with the run anyway. So I'm going to wait until after the run. And if then I got an unreasonable amount of messages, I have to price it up, right? And if not, then I can still opt to do the sale. I don't know. It will not
This
happen
way
again.
you don't forget about the item.
I'm not
'cause
very
everyone
routine.
reminds you.
Being continuously reminded. Fine.
But there's also other rewards now from, I don't know whether that was their last league, but like we don't only have like these hidden loot goblins, like the loot modifiers that now we can't see anymore, for better or for worse, mostly for better because you don't have the fear of missing out. You don't run with a magic find color, but you also get two things that I specifically noticed. One was the thing we already talked about, where you can steal monster mods, and that's just, one monster, you kill it, you get its mods. And then there's also the one, I'm sure you've encountered that as well, the one that gives an absurd amount of gem XP that like just dings all your gems. Like basically, even if they're level 18 or 19, like they just instantly hit max next level and you can instantly level them all up.
Yeah, that was a surprise. Just all of a sudden this wall of gems leveling when usually they're just sort of out of sync, right?
Yeah, they trickle in one by one.
That was a surprise, but it took a while to kind of process what was happening.
Yeah, my chat and I were trying to figure it out because it puts that like pillar of light on you that seems like an incubator dropped or a unique item dropped or something, and we were trying to figure out what it was. And then somebody the next day in my Discord said, "Oh, it's gem XP," and then that night or like log back in a couple hours later, hit level 20 gems by the time like level 88. I'm like, wait, holy crap. That's a lot of XP I've gotten on these gems in the meantime. It's great. I love this change. Although it messes with some of my timings in a way, because before, like when I was doing like speed runs or trying to just push to get to maps, Act 10 runs and whatever, and it's like, okay, I know I can do a run in this amount of time, like 3 hours and 40 minutes. But one of the things that I have to do, towards the very tail end of that is if I hit level 66, that's when I go fight a Zaro, because that's when my gems level up to 18. Yeah, no, not anymore. It's whatever. Get to like level 61. I'm like, yeah, bring it on, Azaro. Got gems. And it's quite common. Like, as somebody was asking in chat how common it is, I notice it at least once a map almost. Well, maybe not once a map, but once every other map probably.
Certainly in mechanics that are very dense in how many rare monsters they spawn. Like if you do like a drop bear node in Delve or something like that, it's way more frequent when you get a shit ton of rares. And yeah, I myself, I've had like 4 or 5 of those already, 6, 7. I don't think about almost every map, but I don't know how much juice you put into your maps and how many additional rares you have. Might be true. It's just funny. The first time it was brought up in chat, I didn't believe it. Like, just one of my regulars said, "Hey, just all my gems while leveling dinged at the same time." I was like, yeah, it's probably just, that spot. You just leveled them all before at the same time, and then they all lined up with the XP or something like that. Must be a coincidence, right? Because sometimes it happens when you're regularly leveling that like many gems happen to level at the same time. But when I experienced it myself, I instantly knew what it was and what my friend was talking about, and that they were right and I was wrong. Because it's so obvious. Yeah, someone in chat just says, still in Act 9 and all my gems are level 19.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's
okay.
Also, that's not power creep, really. Like, you're all going to get level 20 gems eventually. Just nice little spikes. They feel real good. So, like, one thing I learned from last league shenanigans and then going to play other games for a month or 2 months really was that I think I care less about, I care so much less about like, oh, is this balanced? Is this rewarding? Now really care a lot more about just, is it fun? Just, am I having fun? And if I'm having fun, then it's successful. And I'm not having fun, then it's not successful. And now I'm having fun. That's the only thing that matters.
I'm not the only thing, but the most important one for sure.
I always have like a positive and a negative. The positive is gem XP is fun. Getting that free gem XP, a lot of fun. The negative is clicking 28 level up gems.
Well, you're going to click them anyway, just not at the same time.
Tryxt uninstalls.
Yeah, but like I'll be in a map, right? And again, playing hardcore, I guess it matters just slightly more, maybe. But I'm starting to click them and just spam clicking them, and then suddenly my character moves into an area that I don't want it to move to, and I'm like, no, I have to stop spam clicking for a second to move backwards that way because all the spam clicking, I miss one or two.
Or you could just live with that giant column of leveled gems on the right side of your screen, just staring at you, waiting.
That's what I do till the end of the map.
Just a constant reminder.
Balor, you sound like one of those people who like has like 300 unread Discord messages. I don't know how you do it. I have to click on those gems right away. They have to go.
You should see my email. Last time I looked, it had 42,000 unread emails.
Wait, it's a lot of promotional spam, probably, right?
Yeah. I check it every day too. It just looks like an overwhelming amount of problem to deal with to clear it out. So I just look, and whatever's on the first page, that's what I look at, and then I just close it off.
Huey needs a mark all as red button for the gems.
Google hates him.
Yeah.
All right, we touched on the. Oh yeah, please finish your thought.
Real quick, I tried to clear it out once, but the mark all as red is only a page at a time, which is only 100 emails, and I have like 20,000 emails. I'm not doing that. So I gave up after like 3 pages.
I mean, how many do you get daily? Like you could like set a daily goal to like mark a set amount of emails on that day as read, and then slowly work yourself through the backlog by just dealing with more emails every day than you get in, like just a tiny little bit more. I mean, if you just do like an extra 10 or 20 every day, eventually you'll have that stack worked down.
Or
you could also just wait 2 or 3 years until it's completely irrelevant and just bulk delete it all.
I could just not do anything about it at all. Just let the numbers sit there.
Doesn't that eventually give you problems with I don't know, like what email provider are you using? Gmail? Isn't it limited to like 2 gigs or something like that? Eventually you'll run out of space. Are you going to make a new email address then?
Yep.
Okay.
Once Balor accumulates enough stuff in his house, he just burns it down and buys a new house.
Get a new house. It's fine.
I mean, to be fair, that's how I do it with my mouse pad.
Yeah. Once I have abused the hell out of this mouse pad, I'm not going to go put it in the wash. I'm just going to go buy a new one. And email addresses are free too.
True.
Even better.
True. Well, so we've touched a little bit about on the rewards item drops from mostly the Arch Nemesis changes, but how do you feel about the Arch Nemesis changes or Nemesis monster changes in general, or rare monsters? Nemesis 2, I guess, is the most appropriate name. Like the moment-to-moment combat, how are you enjoying that outside of the rewards?
I'm enjoying it a lot. I want to give props to GGG's game designers, especially. So in my head canon has been like this. They've sort of like following the narrative of Arch Nemesis as it's progressed since it was made core. They've tried to make something core, and they doubled down on it. And kind of following the chain of design, right? So like, first we're going to make rare monsters interesting. All right, well, they're interesting, but they're not rewarding to fight, so let's make them rewarding. And they kind of just kept following that chain, and to their credit, that's what they should have done. But at no point did they ever take a step back and just go, is this fun? Is it being well received? Do people like it? And I think at what they've done this league has been brilliant. They've taken that step back. They've looked and said, what's the goal? We need interesting, engaging, rare fights that feel rewarding. And our current system isn't accomplishing that. How can we rework it to make it fit that objective? So instead of like following the chain that they've been doing, they took a step back and took a different path with it. And I think that takes a lot of character to be able to do. Even though it took a couple of leagues of prodding, I think what we've ended up with is something really good. The moment-to-moment combat feels great, in my opinion. The things that are annoying are annoying. Ice Prison, for example. But I don't really feel at this point that any of it is too onerous to play around. My one gripe, though, is that we've lost color-coded mods, which isn't normally a problem, except for things like Crystal Skin. when suddenly all that stuff explodes around your feet and you had no idea it was coming. So I feel like we're missing that. Maybe they can do something about that. But in general, in my opinion, Archdem feels really good.
Oh, I have just quickly before I let the others speak on that. I just have one quick remark to what you just said with the crystal skin, and that is there's these Lunaris versions of the tentacle whippers, right? Tentacle miscreations. The Lunaris versions have like blue, purplish crystals on their back, and when they die and they lie on the ground, it looks very, very similar to the crystal skin things. And yeah, like you said, generally in the heat of combat, when there's so many corpses on the ground, you just don't see the crystal skin. And then having like a distraction like that where it can look very similar. Yep. Yeah. Rough. But yeah, how do you feel about the entire Rare Monster game, Tryxt?
So yeah, I do have a problem with them not having any sort of color coding, or like sort of they have the symbols, but they're really hard to see for like buffs and minus resistances and stuff like that. So I would appreciate some sort of color coding and some sort of change to just this little bit of text that is in one singular color that is very hard to read. I know they're saying, "Oh, read in the heat of combat." Yeah, there's 14 rares on my in my ritual. I can't mouse over all 14 of them and read while I'm trying not to die at the same time. And they know this. They've seen their game being played. They've played their game themselves. So I find it kind of odd. But in the back of my head, I thought it was kind of a joke also, just in a sense of like, oh, you guys didn't like Arch Nemesis? How about this? You like Arch Nemesis now?
The answer is no. We like Nemesis too. This is great.
Yeah, I much prefer this model of rares. I still do think that there's a few that are overtuned in some ways. Like, I just don't think that Trickster should be in the game. It's the stupidest thing. Getting rid of it would not affect anybody aside from those who are annoyed by it. Executioner, extremely problematic.
That's my pet peeve.
Executioner needs to go away. There's a few other ones that I find just unsettling. The ones that stun, like it just says stuns, and it stuns you with any attack, including if it uses Incinerate, like I think in Act 2, the snakes that cast Incinerate, that will chain stun you unless you have the Pantheon or if you're immune to stun. So yeah, that one's a fun one. I found that out in Act 2 or 3 or whatever.
Arcane Buffer also has like a guaranteed extra long stun or something, right?
Yeah, but this is any attack that it does stuns you. So if it has Incinerate or anything that is a very low cast time of some kind that hits you over and over again, you are stun locked.
Rate.
Yeah, entirely by that. So some of the things I think need to get changed and tuned. I do find that rares are a little bit overly tanky. Still, really? Some of them. Yeah, I some of them at least. Especially
few and far between though. Like I think it's like the scary mods that you mentioned, like Executioner and stuff. I notice them far less frequently. Like maybe it's also a contrast to Delve where you have so many rares puked on the screen. But like Endless Delve, I felt like I had them on every other node, and now it's like every couple of maps you'll get like one of them or two of them, right? And now it's a lot more spaced out. And the same way I perceive the tankiness, right? Like yeah, there's still extremely tanky rares, but not quite as frequently as last League.
Agreed. Yeah, the other ones before, when you got certain Arch Nemesis combinations, they were impossible to kill. Some of these guys are just a little bit too tanky, and it mainly is Empowered Elements, which now says that it cycles through different resistances. I don't know if it says cycles, but whatever wordage it uses is kind of incorrect because it doesn't cycle through it. It just sits on whatever you're doing. Like if you do physical damage, it's resistant to physical damage, it seems. Like whatever type you do, it just is tanky as all hell. So maybe reducing those by a little bit. Otherwise, they feel so much better than last League. So much better. Oh, actually, one more. Corpse Detonator. That should go. Corpse Detonator, and in my opinion, anything that can blow up a rare corpse, or even worse, a boss corpse, because even if you have corpse removal, if you have the Axe node, if any of you guys saw how Karn died during his push, basically, if you kill a unique, whether it's a rogue exile, whether it's a boss, the corpse actually doesn't go away except for corpse removal from any sort of detonation. And so he killed a boss, and then the boss's corpse got exploded, even though he has the axe node, which destroys corpses. So it doesn't show that there's a dead body there, because the body has been removed off of it showing that. But the body's still there, and he got corpse exploded in a second. So not cool. Get rid of things like that just so they don't cause that kind of problem, in my opinion. But
it must become some kind of flag on that monster that says like corpse cannot be destroyed or whatever.
Yeah, which isn't intuitive, in my opinion. Like, enemies are destroyed upon killing them with axe attacks. That's what it says, right? Just kidding, not all of them. Some of them still will be there, but invisible. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that'll be my take on it. Although, Bella, do you want to go first?
Kind of good on them. I don't really have a problem with most of these things now. It might just be the build I'm playing. I don't know, maybe when I play other builds, I'll encounter problems.
I know in the announcement season or the pre-season, you were like also pretty vocal about losing the color coding.
Yeah, I mean, I like the color coding. I do wish that the color coding existed on specifically like the touched mobs and whatnot. Can't believe they missed that.
Right.
The touched mobs. Just because they're cool, but like, I don't know. I don't want to complain about it too much, because even without color coding, this is 150 million times better than what we were just doing. So like, it's weird that they took it away, but whatever. At least I don't have to deal with Arch Nemesis anymore. So, okay.
Yeah. For me, it is like the biggest problem I have with the color coding going away. And it's like, on the one hand, I really like it that we don't have that list of color coded mods anymore. And that we do have a little bit of description for the people who are interested in finding out more about what the monster does. But for the most part, I feel it's like a concession or like a admission of we realize our game is played at a pace where you can't realistically be expected to read all the monster mods and then act accordingly. So the monster mods, or the modifiers that require you to play differently in order to not die or in order to successfully beat the rare, those are mostly ones that are communicated with the visuals of the effects, right? Like the Executioner aura or the mana siphon thing or something like. We know them by now. We can tell from the visual. I guess in the case of Crystal Skin, the visual could be a little bit stronger or stuff like that. But I generally like the idea that they're moving away from signaling via the text on the monster and like signaling with a strong visual. The only problem is that there's some mods, like the one that you just mentioned, where the corpse can't be removed, that is not strongly signaled either way. It's like not visual in the 3D space of the game, and it's not very visual as a mod on the monster. So stuff like that really requires you to change your behavior. If it doesn't have a strong like 3D effect animation, then that should be color coded on the monster, maybe like even with a big exclamation mark with a big red outline or something like that. Here, pay attention, this is Rippy, or something like that. I mean, yeah. To some degree, they don't want to, tell the player what is Rippy and what is not, but I think if it doesn't have a strong animation, a strong tell during the gameplay, then there should be at least a hint on the text.
I completely agree with you, Catmaster. I think the key there is, if they have some sort of ability that requires you to do some kind of counterplay, it should be they should give you the chance to do that. Invite you to do it essentially, and awareness is key there. Because if you don't know that the corpse detonator is going to blow up under your feet, or if you didn't expect it to because it's a boss's corpse and you thought you destroyed it with your axe mastery, then it doesn't seem like a very fair situation with fair counterplay.
Yeah, that's one of the good points, that if there is any counterplay that you can do, it should be visually represented that you need to engage with that counterplay. It reminds me almost of, it's less so of an issue these days, but Tormented Martyrs, they were way worse back when they just exploded anything that was touched by them instantly. And did like their, that instantaneous full damage. that kind of thing. And they didn't have an aura associated with them. They still don't have an aura associated with them. So you can't tell the difference between a Tormented Martyr and a regular one. And at the pace that the game is being played, it's not really fair. And I feel like that, I don't know if it's laziness or if it's they've determined that they're okay with killing you unfairly every so often. Maybe they're fine with that. And that seems to, show up in different facets. This being one of them.
I mean, the game is so complex nowadays. There's always going to be rips that catch you off guard, right? Like they can still be fair and they can still be like properly communicated. Like a rip can still feel unfair the moment that it happens, but then that's the best rips in my opinion anyway, when you think, oh, what the fuck did I die to? And then you figure it out and you're like, oh, I could have told that before. There's actually a learning experience here. I can prevent this from happening next time. The worst rips are the ones where you're like, yeah, this fuck all I could have done against that. Yeah. Wait, did Discord crash again? No one's saying anything? Was my joke that bad?
No, I think we were just waiting for one another to say something, not to talk over each other.
I like that. You guys are very respectful, very careful with the timing. Not a lot of talking over each other. Almost like we're doing this professionally.
That's a scary thought.
I was just eyeing Aphelion there and just like, no, okay. All right.
We're waiting to finish two sentences.
I was going to do this one, like present you the Discord. There you are. Discord has been presented for you. Good, sir.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, that is one of the big things in this game. I know this is coming from a hardcore standpoint. I know, like, sure, there's some deaths that happen in softcore, and you're like, man, I was so close to leveling. That pisses me off. But luckily, those are few-ish in the game at this point. But yeah, just some things it would be nicer if they can be communicated. Like again, that I talked about, I think when I was on the podcast last time, Ventrua's death in Mayhem was the most ridiculous thing possible. And sure, he's learned something from it now that it's over and done, but he had to really, really figure out why the hell that happened. For people who didn't know this one, he died when fighting Minotaur. Minotaur has the beams, the lightning conduits that go in between and block off his arena. They shock you and they do very, very minimal damage and they slow you. Now, Despair, before the recent changes, Despair had a flat damage component to it. It would do flat chaos damage, something like 30 to 55, somewhere around there. Now, if you got the altar that caused your curses to be reflected back to you, you'd get, the Despair curse put on yourself. And so, of course, Ventrua having 30 to 50 extra damage being put on him from his Despair curse being reflected is a non-issue until you walk through that beam that hits you continuously every like 0.5 seconds, and that for some reason had an added damage effectiveness of 10,000 within the code. Then that beam suddenly hits you for 3K per hit, and it goes off like more like 0.2 seconds. Every 0.2 seconds you get hit by that. And that's, after resist, like 3K was what he was taking approximately. So he just died instantaneously. So things like that, that's a very unfair death that it wasn't avoidable at the time, but now that you have the game knowledge, you can avoid that going forward. Having to dig deep to find the game knowledge is a pain. Yeah. But things like detonate dead counterplay when there's no real visual indicator or visual clarity, I guess you could say. Little bit worse. I find those ones are just aggravating.
Yeah. So, I think it's important to point out here when I say like you have the feeling that you could have prevented the rip, that it's important that you could have prevented the rip with your knowledge prior to the rip. Like that the rip wasn't mandatory for you to have the learning experience in order to prevent it, right? That you could have had that learning experience in some other way that is like realistic and accessible.
Like the Fated Connections podcast. If you were to listen to this episode of the Fated Connections podcast, you would have learned something about the Despair Curse last patch. Damn.
Nice. I was trying to look for the Ventura rip clip. Does anyone have the link? I would have played it on stream. I can only find his Mayhem Elementalist rip, which I don't think is the one that you talked about.
No, it's the one off his Seismic Trapper. It was on like day 2 of Mayhem. I'll see if I can find it.
30 days ago. Yeah, I'm trying to browse through his clips. I just don't find one, but maybe I'm also Pepega and scrolled past. But anyway, we got another big talking point coming up after talking about the mechanic, the drops, the Archnim or Nemesis monsters. I guess they're not Archnim anymore. What is your approach to the Atlas? Because the Atlas tree has seen a little bit of a shakeup. We've gotten like some new bonuses on the tree in regards to, mostly not Harbinger. There's no new Harbinger note, but there's better expedition notes to the start. I mean, you tell me what appealed to you about the changes and what did you do differently? What are you going for this league? I think Balor wants to directly delve into it.
It's all of them. I have a problem. I need about 700 Atlas respec points because I want to play all of the mechanics. Which is a problem because they're expensive and I'm very poor right now. But I don't know, they look really good. Opening many breaches at once is amazing. Having a lot more control over everything is amazing. You can pretty much guarantee a league mechanic in an Alkan Go scenario. If you want to full spec into like breaches and make sure there's a breach in every single zone, you can just do that, or expedition, or any of the ones that you can block, basically. The whole Atlas rework thing could be, if we didn't have a league at all and we just had that, it would still be quite a lot of entertainment in just figuring out the new passives and whatnot.
So you're saying you would have willingly played Lake of Kalandra again with this patch state?
No.
Good effort.
That's where he draws the line.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Atlas passive changes are fantastic. Anything that gives the players some sort of... anytime when you look at something and you say, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that, and all of these choices are good choices, but now I have to actually make a decision, feels good, instead of, this is the obvious choice because it's so much better than everything else. Like, everything else feels like garbage, so I'll play Seismic Trap. Oh, sorry, I jumped back. But it's better when there's all good things that you have to make a decision between rather than making a decision of what's the best of the worst scenarios.
The funny thing about your Seismic Trap joke was I was thinking about making that joke too, and I decided not to. Much with the same person.
Yeah, I'm just slightly more lowbrow, I guess.
Yeah, completely agree with what you guys have brought up so far. I have to say, like, the Atlas passive tree is probably one of the biggest strokes of genius GG has ever had with PoE. Like, just absolutely, just a peak feature, an absolute highlight of the game, and the changes they continue to make to it are amazing. And yeah, this league included. You know, I thought it was interesting that I personally got very excited to see Rusted Scarabs enter the core drop pool. But now that we've seen the buffs to the Atlas passive tree, you don't even need Rusted Scarabs. Like Balor said, you can add whatever you want to the tree when you want it, and it'll just be there. So I think it's really cool that they're giving the player that much, like that degree of agency. One of the small passive nodes for spawning any kind of side content is as strong as the notables were last league. That's a huge change. And I think it's really cool that we're getting that level of agency over our gameplay experience. You know, they're basically saying, what do you want to do? Here, just go do it.
I've taken a single Delirium wheel, the one that's right near the shaping node, because I didn't want to go for it. And like half my maps have Delirium in them. It cost me 5 points. Like I can't go left because of my current tree, and I'm still like half the time running Delirious maps, which is great.
That's a juicy one, Exile.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. And just that ability to kind of customize your gameplay and tailor the game to your interests and strengths is something that people have been asking for a long time. and they're getting even more of it now. First it was scarabs and trying to hoard those and then use them intelligently, and then scarabs became more common, and now we have this kind of axis that we can explore as well. And it's really cool to see them kind of offering up to the player, just you like blight, here, go be a blight enjoyer. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, I think they're in a really fortunate situation also with the Atlas tree, because they can give players something that they've been asking for so long, that they've wanted, and this agency. But oftentimes when there's player demands, like make crafting easier or more deterministic or something like that, it doesn't quite align with what they want to do with the game, and so they can't. But I think the Atlas tree is like something that makes Path of Exile feel more like Path of Exile, right? Like another layer of customization to your experience. And yeah, it feels awkwardly balanced. I mean, if you think about how complex it is, how many nodes and all that stuff, it feels, and I think that's reflected in what Balor said, like you want to try everything. Everything seems so good to get, right? In its own right.
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty good compensation for the quote unquote historic quant and rarity bonus that a lot of these mechanics have had. And I kind of wonder, if they were holding back on giving the player this much control over how much of each mechanic they saw, because they were worried about that. I don't know. To me, it's a fair trade.
I think that was one of the biggest things. I think I talked about it on stream the other day, because frankly, they removed something that was quite important to the game. They didn't communicate it. We've all gone through that. We've played it over in our heads 1,000 times. But now the dust has settled, it does make a little bit of sense with just the amount of agency we've been given. Like, sure, there's a lot of really good mechanics out there, and they still feel great. But think about how much greater they would feel with all that quantity added to it, and that you could run it infinitely. Probably a little bit OP, don't you think? So
yeah,
I guess it was a bit of a precursor.
It sound like it was okay for them to do that to us for 4 months, and I'm not gonna. It wasn't.
It wasn't. I agree with you on that. It could have happened during this patch, and that would have saved a lot of grief in Calandra.
Yeah.
But I mean, so by that same logic, they should also understand that a lot of these changes are basically precursors to PoE 2 aren't okay either. Just because we get the carrot at the very end doesn't mean we want to have a carrot on a stick for a while. So,
yeah.
And again, I've been gifted a lot better than a lot of other people have. I've been given the opportunity to focus on work for 6 months to 8 months of the year, and then get to play the game. And that was during Expedition. That was during Calandra. That was, yeah. I got to skip some of the dark ages of PoE in a way.
You're not hiring, are you?
Not for you.
I'm qualified,
no.
trust me.
I would
Shots
not do
fired.
that to you. Dear God.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and
What are
any
your thoughts there,
outliers
Grandma?
that you want to point out? Sorry, what did you say, Aphelion?
I was asking what your thoughts were.
My thoughts. I kind of like that you get out of the start through betrayal, which is like something that I really value at the point that I breach into maps anyway. I really like to get some additional Jun missions to ramp them up so I can get my veiled items, get my safe houses and all that stuff. And then right after the betrayal thing, you get an expedition cluster with 4, 4, 4, and another 12. You get 24% chance to get an expedition encounter in your maps just right out of the start. And you can directly go on and pick up breaches. Breaches are great because breaches, you can now open multiple breaches at the same time in the map. So even if you have a lot of breaches, you can have them overlap and all that. And then breaches have this new beautiful visual effect that looks amazing. And they also feel like they have
Really
good
does.
density
Yeah.
now, good drops. It really feels like this revival of breach. I don't know. It's just so good. And then you can just directly from there on continue on. Like another couple travel nodes, you can get the good abyss node. with the chance to contain an abyss per pack size. Then I'm picking up Harbingers. Then I can pick up my expedition stuff, and I can pick up more Harbinger stuff and more Harbinger. I knew from the start I want to lean into Harbinger because of the fracturing orbs, but I've been told that standard juicers have concluded that they're incredibly rare. Sadly, but
They're
I mean,
also
we didn't
worth an
expect
incredibly
it.
large amount though, so that's fine.
Yeah, it's definitely a good thing that they are available now. And I mean, if they turn out to be too rare, they can always tune them up later, right, and give us more of them, which is historically what has usually happened, right? It's like better to release it a little bit undertuned and then to give people a little bit more later, which I guess is also probably what's going to happen with the league mechanic, unless people get a lot better at it and see results themselves. They're probably going to make it a tiny bit, a little bit easier and a good chunk more rewarding, possibly. I don't know, though. It's like really weird. I honestly didn't expect this sort of league mechanic. That's maybe something I should have said earlier when we were still talking about the league instead of tangentially approaching it from the Atlas discussion. But I was expecting that we'll get a league mechanic this league, because I wasn't thinking that GGG had postponed releases so far, that 3.21 is now not at Christmas, but it's 3.20. So we don't get an Atlas expansion this league. And I was expecting an Atlas expansion. And historically, alongside an Atlas expansion, we usually get a juicy mechanic that adds monsters and rewards in your maps, but is not too in-depth in terms of own systems or outside of maps. League playing, right? And we got the complete opposite. Instead of getting a GG juicer mechanic that is a crowd pleaser that I thought would have been the right thing to give to people this league, especially in, the Christmas release and all that, I'm actually positively surprised and applaud the effort that GGG did an outside of the box, like an untypical mechanic, almost like sort of venturing into the experimental, similar to Heist and Betrayal, where it's not a classic Path of Exile mechanic, but it's different and it's doing well. And I'm sure we're going to get the GG Juicer mechanic next league when we get the big Atlas expansion. If we do, I get one, which I assume.
I kind of feel like just with the rework of the Atlas passive tree, we almost did get kind of a GG juicer mechanic in a way. I know it's not the typical massive endgame revamp that we've gotten in previous times where, Maven got introduced and Cirrus got introduced, but oh man, this Atlas passive tree makes up for that. Feels great. And I also just want to throw out there, I very, very much hope you are correct that they do upgrade or up the drop rate on fracturing orbs. Because I think in this whole private league of there's only 25 to 30 of us, but 20 of us are playing pretty much nonstop. And all put together, we don't have one fracturing orb. I think we have about half of a fracturing orb so far.
Real group effort there. But then it makes it feel more impactful. I mean, I don't know.
Which one gets it?
I was worried. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Probably
the aura support. But then, you still have to land the 1 in 4, and it's probably going to break anyway. But no, what I was worried about is that the fracturing orb would be too rare, because I thought with the revamp to the arch nemesis that we're going to get less fractured items directly as a drop. And I was worried, which exactly what happened, that the league mechanic wouldn't give you fractured items as rewards. But I feel like from the random monster drops, you still get a reasonable amount of fractured items. So that the need to fracture things yourself is not that big, especially not in Trade League, where you can basically buy the fracture that you're looking for. But that said, I mean, obviously I'd like it to be more common. I'd like to play around with it, and I'm looking forward to playing HCSSF again. And if I have that carrot on a stick that I can realistically farm out of fracturing orb myself and go for the fracture, then that's a huge motivational boon, right?
I also want to call out, since we're talking about the Atlas tree, their point about having to respec your tree in order to run bosses, just spot on. That everybody did that, right? I mean, I hope you did anyway. If you wanted to run Cirrus, suddenly you're spending 5 points, etc., to go take a bunch of points from the Cirrus wheel, and removing those points has been great, because now you can run whatever boss you need to do and not feel like you're missing out because you didn't spend a bunch of on making this.
Yeah. And I mean, you still have the unmaking sort of stuff when you want to lean into a different league mechanic. I really like that they keep the Atlas tree to customizing your mapping experience. And I mean, they said that the power that they took away in terms of like being able to double down on boss risk reward scenarios, that they're going to reintroduce that in another place, but not on the tree. Which I think it's cool that it gives the tree its own sort of area of competence, and then we'll get another system to customize the bosses. That is separate. That lowers the pressure on the unmaking orbs and also lowers the threshold for people to actually go into these boss fights. Because previously for me, it was a long time until I got ready for bossing because I knew I needed to change my entire tree around. So I needed to make good use of my current tree state. So it felt worth it to swap into the bossing setup. And you needed to also save up a lot of access to the actual bosses so that you could make good use of the respec before you respec back into a farming setup. And not having that change from your farming setup to your bossing setup is spot on. I agree.
It's going to be the second Atlas tree that I thought we were getting ages ago.
You think?
I don't
That
know.
button.
Yeah, the button.
Wasn't
Like
that
a
Keureg's
scourge.
vault?
Yeah, it was.
I haven't looked at Keurig. Did they already release the Battle Pass this league? I didn't see it.
They just
did, yeah.
did just now.
This morning.
Okay, then
Yep.
that's something I'm going to be looking at later on stream. Awesome. Good stuff in there?
Haven't looked yet.
Oh, okay.
Haven't looked.
Oh, wait. So does that mean we all do our first look here on the stream when we finish the Atlas topic? And then we're already a little bit over time. Let's round up things. I on pretty much every single section of the topic list, I had the question on, with your knowledge from the starting weekend, what would you do differently if you got to start only this league because you're busy in the launch weekend or because you're waiting for the console launch? We have a lot of people listening to this podcast that want that first launch weekend expertise from us, that hands-on experience in order to plan their own league start. What's like some core pieces of advice that you would give in terms of, league starter build, Forbidden Sanctum mechanic, or even like the approach to the Atlas tree? What's the most valuable things that you'd give a friend on the way if they were to start this week?
Play one of the meta builds and don't go Bone Zone for the league mechanic.
It's definitely league start build, right? Like a lot of the good league start builds didn't end up being good, including the one I started.
Yeah, I've
So
heard.
play
because of the
Seismic or
league
Cold
mechanic.
Dot.
I've definitely heard of an
Seismic-
above average number of people re-rolling.
Seismic, Cold Dot, SRS,
Hmm.
any other form of trap, or any totem build, whether it be artillery ballistas or whatever totem build you want, something where you can like hide around the corner in the league mechanic. The artillery ballista one was really good as well. There's a bunch around that are really good for the league mechanic. I wish I started the artillery ballista build and then respec'd into this when I got like really good gear later on. Because I was limited on the league mechanic side.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you intend on focusing and enjoying the league mechanic a lot, pick your build very carefully for it. If it doesn't look that interesting to you, but you still want to play PoE, play whatever you want. Expedition is still there. Heist, if you're a heist enjoyer. I'm sure
Yep.
there's other mechanics as well that aren't as interesting as Expedition is to me. But and I think the other thing I would point out is I've found personally that map sustain has been even better this league. I've had
so good.
absolutely no issue dropping whatever maps I needed. So I would say don't worry about the shaping the skies, whatever nodes. Don't bother with those. You won't need them.
Oh yeah, full agree on that. Like I've not spec'd into them so far, and I've not regretted it at all.
Yeah, every league, if I try to like get a very quick push, what I do is I go Wandering Path and grab all of the Jun mission stuff so that you have like a 12% chance of getting a Jun mission while you're along the way, and then all of the connecting map ones, and you just juice your Atlas entirely, and it just easily gets you to killing Exarch, killing Eater of Worlds very quickly. Don't really need to do that because it seems like there's a lot of juice in the maps themselves right now, and drops feel a lot better. So, I mean, nonetheless, I think the Wandering Path route will get you there quicker, but you don't have to do it to really excel, I feel like.
Yep.
And any other sort of piece of advice? Well, don't forget to do your Feldshrine ruins. That's probably the most important takeaway. If you missed the beginning of the podcast,
Including Act 7.
Yeah, Act 2, Act 7. Do your Feldshrine ruins quest with the League NPC in order to set up to fully unlock the potential of the League mechanic and to actually get relics and stuff.
I thought of one thing.
Oh, yeah.
Where look on your right-hand side. If it says find the exit, you don't have to kill all the guards. Just run to the exit. If it says kill all the guards, you got to kill all the guards, unfortunately. But the one that says run to the or find the exit, beeline to it. Don't take any resolve damage. You barely get coins anyways. So
yeah, if you move fast enough, then they don't hit you.
T16 maps, they drop 5 Aureus coins. It's not worth the effort. Just run by.
For now, unless they buff them. If they end up dropping like 25 coins, stop and kill them again.
Oh, also, don't buy the potion from the merchants. Getting 50 resolve back for 200 coins, not really worth it.
It's worth it if it prevents you from failing in the next zone.
Oh, yeah. If you're at that desperation point. But, otherwise, merchants can give you some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, I had some pretty sick shit. I think I actually had in one of my most recent merchants, I had the where you deal 50% more damage. You just get 50% more damage to everything, to all the guards and monsters and stuff. And it sounds better than it is at first because 50% more damage is quite a bit. But then of course there's also afflictions like 25% less damage and so on. So it gives you just a little bit of leeway with the afflictions when you get that big buff to your damage from the vendor.
And it says more damage, right? Or does it say increased?
It's a more.
Sorry, we're not allowed to talk down
50%
that road.
more. That's what I'm saying. It's insane. It's like it's literally like 1.5 times your damage.
Yeah, it is very good.
Right. I think that's that. Unless you have like something else that you want to point out. Anything?
You look very handsome today.
Thanks. It's the new glasses. Appreciate it. You too. I could return that to both of you. Look very handsome, very quality gameplay footage, and we had an excellent conversation.
Great.
Guys, if you don't know these wonderful creators, make sure that you check them out. I'm going to leave shoutouts in chat if I can. Do you want?
You
to
also
quickly...
just said you too, which I don't know if I got left out. Aphelion got left out.
Me, right?
No, Balor got left out because Balor is
definitely not counting me. Yeah,
Balor is always here. Also, Balor is already has a hugely inflated ego, so I have to be very careful with the compliments.
This whole podcast is an exercise in Balor's ego management.
He's down 16 kilos. Just start sending him pizzas or something.
Whoa, no.
Take him down a peg before he can get there.
You're going to lose another 14. I needed to lose. The goal was 30.
Right. Do you want to quickly give a short summary of what people can expect from your stream, from your content in the next couple days, and where they can find you while I wait for the 1 minute cooldown on the shoutouts and chat, so I can do them all?
I guess you shouted me out, so I'll go first on that then.
Good point.
You can find me exactly that address, www.twitch.tv/Tryxt, spelled Tryxt. What you can expect from my stream is sarcasm. That's 90% of the game there. Otherwise, I play hardcore in a group self-found currently. Typically, I'll go GSF or I'll go solo self-found hardcore, but I primarily play hardcore. I got a little bit of game knowledge, still lacking a bit of it, but otherwise, it's a relatively chill stream.
Super chill. I hands-on recommend the stream. I've been lurking many times.
Well, I appreciate the lurks naturally.
Yeah, and you can find me at twitch.tv/Aphelion PoE. Kind of similar vibe to Tryst's, same amount of sarcasm, same amount of lewd jokes.
Same
really, our
first name.
streams are pretty interchangeable, to be honest. So really, it's which bald man you want to watch today, the one playing softcore or the one playing hardcore. It's up to you. We're in each other's chats all the time anyway, so really, yeah, come hang out. We have good streams.
Yeah, similar streams, same name, everything, just interchangeable.
They're actually the same person, but one of them has had their oat milk coffee this morning. And then that's it.
Sitting right there.
Right. And then Balor, do you have YouTube videos planned? You already put out a video explaining the crucial thing about the leak mechanic, right?
Yeah, we've done 2. Find me at BalorMage everywhere. It's just the same name in every single location. I have no idea what's going on, except that I'm going to try like 15 different Atlas strategies that are in my head as soon as I'm like actually geared and situated. I'm so excited about the Atlas trees. We're just going to be doing a bunch of them.
Yeah. That's probably something that I'll be looking forward to. Your verdict on after the league is over and you've had your hands on all the Atlas passives, and then giving detailed feedback about where you feel like things are a little bit so strong that you kind of forced into them, or that you definitely should strongly consider them, and other things that maybe GGG should buff a little bit to get onto the same level. I'm curious because right now, like we said during the discussion, everything looks so good. Everything, I mean, always the charm of the new, right? But also we know the numerical values on some of the things and can put them into context. And yeah, like Expedition looks so good now. It was good before, but everything is sort of attractive. I mean, I've played Blight League in the softcore trade and in hardcore last league, and it's always been a blast. And yeah, there's so many great things to pick. As for myself, I want to make a video about, I want to document the journey of my Blade Flurry Poison, because I feel like despite the build being an ugly duckling right after the switch from Poisonous Concoction, I think that the build has a lot of potential to actually shape up to a point where people look at the gameplay and are like, oh, I want to play that as well. How much is that? And yeah, that's where I want to get. And then I want to make a good video about the build, a good comprehensive video. I also want to make a good comprehensive video about the league mechanic with like the do's and don'ts and tips and tricks as soon as I got a little bit more hands-on experience with that, because right now I've, done less than 10 total Forbidden Sanctums, and I'd feel it would be a little bit dishonest if I did a video now telling people, hey, this is how you have to do it, because I haven't figured out shit. But as soon as I have, I'm willing and looking forward to sharing that knowledge.
I think you've touched on something really good there, actually, if I can just jump in.
Absolutely.
I think there's a big hole, actually, in PoE content creation that maybe you have a chance to fill there, Catmaster. Ever since I've started playing SSF, I've kind of started noticing, and Tryxt probably knows all about this because he does this a lot, but I've kind of started noticing how many little like micro decisions I make. Today I need to upgrade this, today I need to upgrade that. There's a little tweak to this gear or to the tree. And it might be interesting to see kind of a journal format almost of how you evolved your build over time and what kind of decisions you made and what information you used to make those decisions.
Dude, I've been thinking about doing this for like the past 3 years, and I just never have done so. I was going to do basically PoE vlogs, like every night of a new league launch, to say, what I went over, what I should have done differently, and what I'm going to plan out for the next day, and then execute that stuff the next day. But I'm lazy. So we haven't gotten around to that.
Yeah.
Consistency is key, though. I mean, I can definitely see that could ramp up on a YouTube channel really well if you just keep going at it every day or every other day, make a video with the progress. I just feel like in the beginning you make a lot of progress, and then later you have to kind of either like find other things to talk about or like lower the frequency, because as the build gets into the high 90s and so like changes are not as frequent anymore and not as significant, and you're probably not going to be able to fill videos that easily. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who do sort of build journals or league start journals, but for the most part, most people don't go beyond like day 1, 2, 3. Then they start slacking, including myself. I've done that in the past. Day 1, my league start. This is my build, and that's my plans. And tomorrow I'll tell you what we changed and what we still do. And then it's it's always the consistency. I mean, I can blame it honestly on having to do all these podcasts and also doing a fair amount of streaming. But yeah, really, I should just set myself a timer, right? Like a schedule on the phone. Every day, the phone rings at the same time, and then at that time, whether I'm streaming or not, I should just press the start recording button and talk for 20 minutes about my build and how I feel about it at that point. And then you can still, if you feel like you're rambling too much, you can edit it down into a shorter video, and if not, you could just upload it in full. I mean, that's also why I did the credits scene on the overlay now, so that I can actually do a one-take recording and then have the credits with all the Twitch subs and the Patreon subs in the end of the video without having to do the extra step of putting it into the video editing program and adding the footer and the header and all that. It's all in one go.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize how much work it actually does take to put out content. And you are a busy man, as is. I feel like both you and Balor are quite busy with content creation already. Add more into the mix probably gets a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, you got to be careful to like strike that work-life balance that you say. I mean, obviously, this is when you do this as work. It is fun because essentially you're making your hobby a job. It's not my main job. Like I probably have to get another job on the side, right? But this has potential to be definitely a part-time occupation. I mean, we got a good thing going here with the podcast. I got a nice, lovely community on the stream and all that. So, but you always have to make sure that you don't burn yourself out, that you don't commit to a time plan that will be unsustainable in the long run for you.
That's the reason why I also haven't really committed to anything of the sort aside from, my usual work schedules, right? Where this is not work for me. This is fun. Yeah. A lot of fun, actually, but it stays
but
there.
Even if you were in a position where you quit your job and you full-time stream Path of Exile, you still have to make sure, unlike with a regular job, that it remains fun. Because if you play the game on stream and you're not having fun, people pick up on that really quickly. If you talk about your build and you're not enthusiastic about Path of Exile at all, people pick up on that. Your content does get worse if you're not naturally, motivated to do it. And
like Balor, how would you have felt if you had to stream Path of Exile all last league? Like you had to.
I should have. I lost probably 150 subs by playing non-December for 2 months. And I you know what? Worth.
Yeah, it's worth at the end of the day, though, because you would have been miserable, right?
I didn't hate every day of my life. So
call it an unpaid vacation.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'm going to go binge more of this league. I don't know about you guys, but...
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, this podcast is getting awkwardly long. I feel like heavy withdrawal. I feel this need to get back into some
gotta get my fix.
You got some more of those Oreos. Anyway, yeah, guys, the shoutouts were given in chat. If you missed the shoutouts, then seek out the Fated connections on the various platforms, on YouTube in full, or on the Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast fixes. And of course, in the description there, you'll find detailed links to the content of both guests, Aphelion and Tryxt, and our co-host BalorMage here. And right, what do I want to say? Yeah, this one thing I always want to say in the beginning of the podcast, but I always forget about it, but I want to make a habit of it. This podcast can only exist thanks to your support. I mean, I'd still be doing as much as possible if I didn't get your support, but it would probably be less possible. So I want to give a big shout out to all the Patreon supporters, all the people who keep renewing their Twitch subscriptions. And of course, if you're able to share the love, it's much appreciated. Also go sub to these wonderful creators. And now we're going to roll the credits and end the recording. And we'll see you for the next podcast. The next Fated Connections will be on Saturday. Actually, that's kind of interesting. Wait, I need to quickly check fated.fyi. I'll update the fated.fyi/next, but I think 95 CD should already give us the countdown for the next episode, which is Saturday, 17th of December, 12 p.m. or a.m., 12 p.m. GMT. So noon GMT. We're going to be joined by Grimrow and Crouching Tuna to discuss the entire first week of this league launch. So I'm very much looking forward to that because Grimrow and Tuna are always very insightful, very high effort, high juicer mechanics players and very analytically minded. So yeah. Looking forward to that. And until then, have a wonderful time with the league. Have as much fun as we have and don't fall into the same traps that we fell into. But I'm sure if you've listened to the entire episode, you have some ideas of what to avoid and what to look forward to. Until then, we'll see you for the next episode. Looking forward and bye-bye.
That was fun.
No.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, you know what? Fuck your chat. It's the worst chat I've ever seen. Oh, shoot. Crap.
God, that Catmaster chat.